Yeah.
Oh my god, no it's not! No it's not! No it's not! Jesus Christ, no it's not! Hello! What the fuck was that, Jess?
Alright.
What the fuck? Jess! Jess!
Well, mate.
Oh no, I'm not gonna make it!
Yeah, they did not.
Very good. Yep, there it is. Ready?
I'm not ready, apparently. No one saw that. Yikes. Did I have something below us before?
The chat.
Oh, is that what it was? Oh, it is there, I think.
Yeah, it just there's no chat yet.
Yeah. I just like couldn't remember. I was like, this empty space seemed a little weird. There you go. You're a banana.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, my video is gonna be really shitty, and
It looks fine.
and my video is gonna be. It definitely does not look.
It looks fine, but I'm also fucking blind. So, and as you can see, I don't.
Like, pixelated and blurry and compressed.
That seems sus. Hey, Zach. La Armory. Yes, La Armory. We'll start out as more of a just chatting as we get into the podcast. Both of us are still waking up, and I'm letting chat also wake up, so. But I do an announcement once, like, I'll let a couple people filter on in, and then we'll do announcements before we fully jump into the podcast. You want to know what's funny, Beta? I forgot to tell you that I figured out what we're going to talk about today, because it's not just what we talked about last night.
It was last night, and then we also didn't do a podcast last week, and we have a topic from there. But yeah, sure, we can talk.
Yeah. No, yes, this is our podcast. Wow. Okay. Bye, voice. Bye. It's Derailevant. So like derail and irrelevant. Derailevant. Yeah, it's the podcast Beat and I do. We'll get into it though shortly. It is not a podcast about Armory. I know, very upsetting. I'll put in a good word for you though with our boss. He like just nodded your head and you're like, huh?
You're the boss.
We're the bosses. This is a mutual thing.
Ew. I'm still really sore.
Well, that's what happens when you work out. Just do what I did this week. I didn't work out at all.
Key area.
Beta decided to like get those gains this week, and I decided why move. So that was the week I had. Beta went fucking ham.
It's fair. Jesse is betraying me, and he's going today, and then I'm betraying him and going tomorrow. Yeah.
He betrayed you in what?
I said he's going to betray me, and he's going today.
I like that you know the betrayal is coming up. Like that's kind of there's something special about that, you know.
Well, because he said like.
And you said you're not going today.
Well, I said I have the podcast and we have D&D, and he goes, "Oh, he goes, maybe I'll just go." And I was like, "Fuck you." I was like,
Hey,
"Well, then I'll go
Phil.
Sunday." Hi, Phil.
I'm not stuck on everything. Hold on, talk to Beta for a sec, because I figure my life out.
Yike.
You didn't even talk to them. All you said is yike.
You only have to have them for like 2 seconds.
Phil, thank you for
Phil 2 seconds. You know.
thank you for being up at an obnoxious hour. You know who didn't make it?
Thank you.
Tice.
No, Leah didn't make
No, he messaged me this morning at like 2:40 a.m. He's like, I'm awake, but I'm late. I was really hoping that you were in the normal. Oh, no. We don't go for any stream stuff. We don't use the normal one. If anything, we use the one that's live with Leah, and it's a locked voice channel. But yeah, thank you, Phil, for being up at an obnoxious hour, everyone. It was Beta's birthday yesterday, so we want some birthday hypes in chat. Birthday hypes in chat.
How does it feel to be old? I feel the same. Thank you. It was fun, Phil. I did have a lot of fun. Thank you, Leah and Phil and Cheese and Jess and Bot.
That's what birthday hype looks like. You're welcome.
I appreciate. Yeah.
Oh my god. It's one of those things where, like, I'm not gonna be able to function today if I can't get my hair to not annoy me, you know?
That's fair. Just have no hair. Can annoy you.
Attempting thought. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, how'd that go, Phil? How'd that go? How'd that go, Phil?
Oh, because the
yeah.
C things are a bit emo.
Yeah, they are.
So.
Bald Leah. Leah's good. Well, okay, so I do have actually some exciting news. I'm actually going to be going full time in the next, like, hopefully couple months.
What?
The latest will be next year when my lease runs out. But yeah, I will be going full-time content creator, so you will unfortunately see more of me. So just, like, mentally prepare for that. But part of why that reminded me of it is I will have some incentives in place, specifically if I hit partner in the next year. I will shave half my head, which was my promise to my chat when I first started streaming. So, you know, there's a lot of fun stuff that's coming up. I'll also, like, have an incentive to dye my hair, because live our best lives, you know? Maybe I'll have an incentive to get my tattoo that I super shouldn't get. It'll be great. We'll have a good time. But I'm super looking forward to it. Because, like, it's gonna be a visible tattoo, and I promised my parents I wouldn't get visible tattoos until, like, I'm set in my career path. YOLO.
Whatever. Every job, like, even your current job, like, if you had tattoos on your arms,
they wouldn't have noticed.
Yep.
Yeah, they wouldn't have known.
So you gotta wear long sleeves, but it's just like
I do anyway because it's cold.
Yeah, if you're at a job where you're working outside, like, they're not gonna care about tattoos, and if you're at, like, a business job, it's probably gonna be fucking cold anyway. So
yeah, the greatest respect to your parents, your body. Yeah, they are. I think it's a little bit though of I'm Jewish, and getting tattoos means you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. Granted, I already have one, but, like, I think that was the initial not super happy and approving. But also, my dad is just very old school, and he's like, God made your body the way it should be, and don't mess with it. Like, that's how he thinks of those things.
My dad and grandma and everyone were super against the first tattoo, and then once I got it, it was just kind of like, now they're just like, you know.
Right. And I think that's like, kind of how my parents have been with all my body mods. Thank you for the host, Jace. I think, like, from getting the tattoo, because, like, that was kind of a quote-unquote extreme body mod to them. And then to gauge my ears and get my nose pierced, they're just like, I don't fucking care anymore. Just fuck off.
After the tattoo, my dad was just kind of like, okay.
Everything else is like, whatever. The gauges scared them the most. They were the most concerned about me getting gauges. They definitely are like, we don't want to see the holes in the ears. And I'm like, you're being a little extra. Just saying.
To my dad, it was just like, well, I have a permanent thing on my body, and these aren't permanent, so, you know.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I guess.
Just fuck off. But yeah. You know, we're slaying life right now. And that actually is going to lead into what I actually want to talk about today. I want us to talk about life changes and kind of picturing where you want yourself to be in X number of months, X number of years, and how nerve-wracking it is when you take leaps of faith, but how rewarding I think they can be and why I think it's worth it, despite, like, the potential for super falling flat on your face. Because I think I'm especially at a huge turning point in my life with, like, the decision I've made to go full-time and leave a very steady job with great pay. Well, I'll use great pay in quotes, but compared to what I'm going to not be making, and benefits and all of those things, and taking a leap of faith to pursue what makes me happy. And I think the more I sat with these ideas, I was just really stressed about the idea of regretting things and regretting not trying what feels right for me. And as much as I'm fucking terrified, it still feels right. It still feels like for the first time in my life, I'm doing something completely selfishly for me.
Right. I think that's always been my biggest thing is because like time is gonna pass. Like you as a person are gonna be somewhere in 5-10 years, and I'm sure if you think back to 5 years ago, you're not in the spot that you thought you would be in, and 5 years before that, you're not in the spot you thought you'd be in. So like every time you think back, like you're just not where you thought you were gonna be, and so I always say that things can change so fast that you might as well do what you wanted. Because if you think back and you're like, I should have done this or I should have done that, you might not be at a point where you can do the opportunity again. No,
I think that's the biggest thing. It's like when an opportunity presents itself, there's never going to be a perfect time. And I think that's the part I've had to get comfortable with, and something I've thought about a lot is just people are always like, oh, this is not the right time to do it. It's what I want to do, but just not the right time. And you're never really going to be presented with perfect fucking timing. Like that's going to be wild, and just that's abnormal and not what most people are going to experience and having a chance to go for what makes them happy. So you have to just at some point recognize when taking the leap is worth it. Beat is super quiet. Let me up him. Sorry.
I was about to say that.
That's so weird. You're all the way up on my end.
But it might be your desktop audio on your stream.
Oh, that's a fair point. I forgot your desktop. That's a good point. I had it background audio the other day and it was too loud. How's that? Yeah. Tell us if Beta's loud enough now.
Ooh. I mean, like, I'm also quieter than like I normally am, but that would really, I guess, just be Discord versus.
I think you're hitting the same spot as me now, though. So I think
probably. Yeah. But right, there isn't a perfect point, and I think that when you have a goal in mind, especially with the way that like you and me also have thought about like streaming and content creation and everything, it was always do it as a hobby until it can become full time. And so in our heads we had the perfect moment, and so every time you would go to think about doing it, you wouldn't be in that mindset, like you wouldn't be at that point where it was like the right time. And I think that's why it doesn't feel like the right time, like I think that's why like those moments don't ever feel correct, because you already just have the one moment. And I think like the best comparison I have to that is like with D&D, when people talk about like they make their backstories and they want these character moments to happen at like this perfect time, and like the way D&D works, like there is never going to be the perfect time. Like you have to make the perfect time, like you have to be like, this seems like a cool moment.
If it's something you want, you have to fight for that chance.
Right, like like some people want certain conversations to happen, like, I want to be like on a hill and the sun's setting and all this stuff, and it's like, or like we're in a cave and we're about to die, so like it's cool time for
so
my
here's
character
a
to say this thing, but also like if you don't get the perfect moment you had in your head, that doesn't even mean that the moment that you had isn't even going to be better than the moment that you imagined, like
I think that when we picture our perfect moment, I think in our brains, it's the one that has like the least resistance, the least complications. And I think we typically associate complications and any issues that arise as not being the perfect moment in our heads.
Right.
I'm not saying that's legit. I also think that's just horribly unrealistic. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Right.
I think that way too.
Right. I think it also depends on the person, right? I think it depends on what, because, if a person is someone who is very much like well thought out and organized and like thoughtful, then they're going to think their perfect moment is going to be where they have answered all the questions, like they're going to have the moment that just has all the boxes ticked and stuff like that.
Yep.
Whereas some people are very much like, I don't need to tick off all the boxes. Like, let's say I want to be a YouTuber. Like, some people's moments are just like, if I hit 5,000 subs, then I can do this, like, and they don't think about the other things because their perfect moment is just that moment, so
right.
I think it depends on
that's fair.
On the person. I do think a lot of people have different things, and I think a lot of people are doing what you say, where they just have the path where it's just like, this will be the easiest. But
I think it's just people are more likely to go for something when it feels like this is an easy transition.
Right, yeah. And I think like we happen to think about everything, and not just like the two things. Like a lot of people who think about transitioning don't think about things like taxes and healthcare and just other smaller things, and they think about, am I making money to cover like rent, and then they go, okay, that's it, and that's all they have to check off, so I think that's where it just like varies, because some people just have different goals in mind for their perfect moment for it.
And that goes into, people have different definitions of success, and we talked about this when Beta showed me a video Ludwig did that was things that help streamers, or like tips for streamers, and some of that Beta and I discussed because of that video had to do with a lot of people, their form of success on Twitch would be being in the top 0.1% of streamers or something. Like their success would be, I'm one of the biggest names on Twitch, everyone knows who I am, and I'm making absolute bank. For me, success on Twitch isn't that. I've definitely seen a lot of really big channels, middle level channels, and small channels like mine. And I prefer the mid-level where you can still be very communicative with your audience. You still have that intimate feeling, but you are able to sustain it. So I want to have, obviously, a career in terms of being on Twitch and being able to sustain that and being able to have a steady-ish income. But I'm not looking for this to be the only thing I do. I'm looking to have so many other aspects of content creation that I delve into that all of the pieces help make up my full job. That's my form of success. That's how I'm viewing success on Twitch. I don't want to be the top gamers. And I'm not trying to say that in like fuck people who want to get huge. No, I don't at all mean that. I would love to become decently sized in the music industry, more so than as just a streamer. But I also think that there are two parts of me that kind of fight each other a lot, where I hate being the center of attention, and all of the things I am pursuing very much make me the center of attention.
You the center of attention. Yeah.
And so I think there are like two parts of me that collide, because while I absolutely love doing this, and I absolutely love music and performing, and I love being in front of an audience and talking about stuff, I don't like the idea of losing privacy. I don't like the idea of the parasocial issues that we have, where people can become a little aggressive, concerning, crossing boundaries. All of those things are not ideal, and being able to almost be big/anonymous is truly, I think, the best way to do it. Granted, that still runs into other issues. Corpse runs into plenty of issues being big and anonymous. Right. Granted, I also threw out that opportunity when I started everything with my full name. So I'm never going to be anonymous, but I think I just want to find a spot where I feel safe, I feel secure, and I'm able to pursue this. That's not to say I'm never going to feel otherwise. That's life, and I'm being a very public person, so that's going to come with some of that and losing privacy, but it's finding that sweet spot.
Right. Yeah, I think like there was something you said at the beginning that when you were talking about different levels of success and things like that, and the different channels that and you just talked about diversifying revenue streams. You didn't say that, but that's what
that was what I was saying. Yeah.
And I think the biggest examples of things like that are these companies that are YouTube channels, things like Rooster Teeth, for instance, where they have way less subscribers than a lot of the really big YouTubers. They have way less
this is not to downplay their success, like, by the way.
No, not at all. They have way less viewers, but they have a company that had close to 500 employees and might still have. I haven't really kept up with it, so I don't know if it's still there. But 500 employees,
that's a decent amount of employees.
Right. You look at a channel like Jacksepticeye, he has a few people employed to do like editing and for different things, but he is still just like one person, and he like is probably very well off, but it's not like he is buying private jets and like mansions and things like that,
Yeah.
but then you have this multi-million-dollar company that has a channel that is smaller, that gets less views per video and all this stuff, and that's what diversifying revenue does. Like when Rooster Teeth started off, they didn't have YouTube and stuff like that. That stuff didn't exist, so they had to basically, and they also had to pay to host their videos. So if you wanted to download, every time I went to their website and I downloaded a video from them, they had to pay for it. Like they had to pay a company to like host it.
Yeah.
And so they immediately were like, well, we need to be able to afford this, because the bills that they were getting once you hit viral, like if you hit viral, you could go bankrupt if you think about it, because you had to pay that bill for all the people that downloaded your video.
Oh my god.
And so that's what happened. Like they got like a $7,000 bill after the end of the first like episode they put out or something like that for Red versus Blue, and they immediately were like, okay, well, like we have to start like doing things. They're like, well, how about we, because we know we're gonna make more episodes. They're like, what if we just like pre-sell the DVD? You know, what if we were just like, hey, if you give us money for the DVD at the end, we will send you the DVD, but also you're helping us pay these bills to then get this thing to like, you know, there.
Mm-hmm.
And then that started to work. And then the next season they're like, what if we give people like an exclusive thing, like they pay and they help us make the thing, and we let them get the episode early, and they can also get it in HD, you know, because back then there was really no stream, and you couldn't stream, everyone had to download it, so there was really, it was hard to do that, so they were like going to offer early and that, and that's what got into like their sponsor deal, which is like you got extra videos, you also got early videos, and you were helping them create stuff like ahead of time, which a lot of people are doing now. Like if you think about it, that's basically what a Twitch sub is. That's what a YouTube like premium thing or whatever
you're paying ahead of time for content you're going to consume.
Right, you're basically just like helping like fund that creator pretty much. And so, you know, they were doing that forever ago, you know, before YouTube even existed, and then they started selling t-shirts, and then they started doing like conventions, and they really started to diversify at the very beginning, and that is what's so huge. You know, if you have a very dedicated, and they actually did Bernie Burns is a huge proprietor when it comes to numbers, because numbers lie all the time. Like you can go look at a channel that has 7 to 9 million subscribers, and he talks about it for their channel too, because they used to host all of their different videos on the one main Rooster Teeth channel. So you had your Red versus Blue and stuff, which is what the company got big for. You also had all the Achievement Hunter stuff, which was like Let's Plays and gaming content and like achievement guides for things. You also started to have like the like in real life content that they were doing, like the podcast and stuff. So there are people subscribed to that channel that would watch one thing. Like if you just like the podcast, you would subscribe and you would just like one thing.
Yep.
And he said we were one of the biggest channels on YouTube at the time. They were top 5 or something like that. So when you signed up for YouTube, you saw like top 5 channels. It was like Smosh and Rooster Teeth and, you know, like whoever else was up there at the time. But he's like, our views on every video were like terrible compared to all of them, because people were only subscribed for like a specific section.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and so he talked about just why like those numbers lie, and why like companies shouldn't just look at those numbers, and they should look at engagement. And I've always been a way bigger fan of the engagement number versus followers or things like that, because there's also gigantic places where where there are tons of followers, like Twitter, for instance. There are people that have millions of followers and their tweets get like 500 likes, you know? And so that's like no engagement. So if you're a brand and you want to like sponsor someone, like you're not going to look at
brands more do look at engagement now because of how many people fake numbers even.
Right. And
I'm
I
not
think
saying
a lot
that's
of brands,
the case for people with big numbers that don't engage. It's just because of the concern.
Right. But yeah, so just like having the diversifying, and he talks about if you could have 1 million people watch something, or you could have 25,000 people who engage in all of your content, he's like, you're much better off just having those 25,000 people versus those 1 million viewers, because the 25,000 people are going to watch it again and again. They're going to buy t-shirts, they're going to sponsor and pay for
they're
the
loyal, they're dedicated.
Right. And the biggest way that you saw that is when they did their, and this is the same for Critical Role too, but if you saw the Kickstarter that Rooster Teeth did for their first full feature movie, it was the biggest film and TV thing on. They did Indiegogo, and they had, I think they raised $2 million from like 10,000 people, you know? And so like that's crazy. If you go and you look at the Critical Role one, they raised almost $10 million from I think 35,000 people. So that's all Critical Role needed. Critical Role had 35,000 people that funded an entire TV series, you know? Like that is all you need. You need 35,000 dedicated, loyal fans, you know, who enjoy your content enough to do that. So, you know, I think that is because like that audience will diversify everything. And so like when you talk about having a smaller, like mid-sized channel, you can actually do really, really well with that if you have a way to have that community be so close-knit that it is like a that they can diversify all of those different places because they want to support you and they want to have t-shirts and stuff like that versus these people that have these gigantic channels. And Ludwig talked about that in his video. He said there are channels when they're like, when you get all the way back to the very, very tippy top, you start getting a lot of donations again. But when you're in the middle between like small and like towards the end of being like a mid-tier, people stop donating because it's like big enough to where they don't feel like they need to or whatever. And it's also like, you're not big enough to where they're trying to like impress you or whatever, you know, because I think that's why a lot of people donate in those big channels because they just want to see their name up there. Right. So, you know, like there is that sweet spot too where it comes to.
And that wasn't also, I wanted to clarify, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to donate to a bigger channel for having your name up there or whatever. Like super, super fine. However you support creators that you enjoy their content, like fucking have at it. But it's, I do like when we go through and...
I was just going to say, because at the end of the day, if that stuff didn't happen, those creators would not be able to sustain their creation, you know?
Right,
So
and then also
like,
I'd have nothing to work towards if I was like, okay, everyone at the top now has to quit. The second you make it here, everyone quits. But I just really like that idea and trying to focus on that more because I know I can sometimes get hung up on numbers, and that's especially because I am looking to make this full time that I can get very hung up on it because to hit partner, I'm fucking eons off. And I definitely have gone through periods where I was almost triple in viewers consistently. And having the huge decline after a very steady point where I was in 20 to 30 for a decent amount of time and then dropping back down to single to double digits, like low end, was a hard reality. And I can get hung up on it because I'm concerned, am I not growing? More than just like the actual number of people in here, because I agree, I think the nice thing is our chat's always engaging. I just have this stressor of, have I gone backwards? Have I stopped producing content that actually excites people, makes them want to engage, makes them want to tune in every time?
So I think that all comes down to encompassing, there's a few different things that when you said it made me think of, but for that specific, like the am I not growing, I think it all comes down to encompassing a specific time period for that. Because when you look at that, you were looking at a very specific like month or two that had happened, and then after that. But if you look at that entire year, you grew exponentially. Like if you looked at the entire year, you were double, if not triple, the amount of viewers that average viewers that you had previously. So I think it's about picking a time period and sticking to that time period for that, you know, because then you could set your goals. Because here's the thing, if you are looking at your content and you're like, I want to grow month over month, you know, but you're not doing things to grow month over month, like you're not like making all these active changes and doing all these extra special things to do that, then you have just set yourself up for disappointing yourself. Absolutely. Because you are keeping your content consistent, because your content might still be good. It might still be good for a lot of people. They have other things going on in their life or whatever might happen, or maybe those specific people don't like that specific content, but that doesn't mean other people aren't going to come in and enjoy that there. And so I personally would probably look at it year over year instead of month over month. I think like that's having those things, unless every month you're going to try and make not drastic changes, but try and make changes to then better that, because that goes into the next thing that I wanted to say was I think it's about like figuring out it shouldn't be about looking at your numbers and being disappointed about the way that they are. It should more be about what can I do to get to the place where I want to be, because I think as someone who is super passionate and who is ambitious and has a lot of goals in their mind, you are always going to be disappointed in a sense, you know, like you're going to look at it and you're going to say, but it could be better, you know? And if you know you're already going to go in looking at that, it's way more important to look at a number and say, what can I do now to like get to where I am? And I always think it's important to at least still look back and be like, this is still a good number, but it's not the number I want. And then
I think
go from there.
As much as I have fixated on numbers, it isn't the number at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's because I do have a goal to make this full time that I think I sometimes worry that having lower numbers means I won't be able to sustain this. So it's more what I think the number means versus actually caring how many people are in here, because at the end of the day, I will say I feel incredibly lucky with this community that people do engage overall, and we all hang out a lot, we all talk a lot, and that makes streams fantastic because there are always people talking and wanting to engage, and I see you all in chat, and that makes me very happy. It just I know that my goal is to make this full time, and I think the concern is I don't want to disappoint myself, and I don't want to disappoint people in my life. And I sometimes worry if I can't immediately go back and be like, look, you can see the actual growth in numbers, because that's a tangible thing. I worry it will be viewed as failure.
I think that analytics are helpful tools, but they're not helpful in plotting your actual success or seeing your actual success in a way of the way you're saying. Because if you go back and you look, and you can always fixate on a point where it could have been better, and that could be seen as failure. So even numbers aside, when you see the numbers where they are, I think you get more focused on the what you just said, like can I make this full time, is it sustainable, and things like that. Whereas especially when you're going to be going full time, it is what can I do to help me feel like I'm doing something to make it better, you know? Because there's always different things that you can try and keep going, and I think it's more about like pushing through that, because as someone who's going to be full time, you'll get so bogged down by looking at those numbers, especially because you're going to be putting like your heart and soul into all of that,
all
and
my time, all my energy. Yep. Right.
And you definitely love to you love to do all that stuff, but you get so hung up on like the, you know, what you could have done. But now, because you're full time, it's the what can I do, you know?
And I think that actually
that's the biggest like switch.
I think that's such a good thing for me, though. Like for me in particular, the way my brain works and the kind of control freak I am, the idea that I will be able to think more of what can I do to help improve and then act on it because I'm going to be doing it full time helps me a lot, just because I feel like I have a little more control. No, I don't have control over the fact that like a video I could put all my heart and soul into could be an absolute flop. That happens all the time. There's niche audiences for stuff. So people don't see it. So while I can't control that, I can control the content I'm putting out and how much I'm enjoying that content. And that at least is something. And that at least I think will give me peace of mind. And I also think, though, us talking about making changes and things like that, I think some of the issues that I have seen creators do, and I'm doing my best not to be a part of that, is if something doesn't immediately work the first time, it doesn't mean immediately abandon that. And
no, correct.
I think that you don't want to become so focused on constantly changing your content and what you produce that you can't even create a steady flow of people that enjoy your content topics. And that's not to say that there aren't tons of streamers. Sorry, let me phrase sentence. I put the emphasis on the wrong word. I'm not trying to say that people shouldn't watch streamers for their personality, because I actually think that is way more sustainable, and we've talked about that before, that watching for who they are over the content ends up giving you a nice, consistent fan base. But I just think that some people always worry when they put a concept out there and it doesn't immediately do as well as they anticipated it doing or thinking it should do, that they just abandon the ideas they had that were in line with that already. Like I did a music segment on my YouTube channel, and I expected those videos to do better than they did. And I had, 1,000 reasons in my head why they didn't perform the way they should have. And I think that has led me to being less likely to continue doing them. That doesn't mean I won't, because I have to get out of my own way too and recognize where I'm doing things that I see in others. I'm like, that's not a great idea. You need to still pursue the ideas that you are passionate about, you enjoy making, even if the first couple tries of them didn't go fantastically. And I've talked to PK about it a lot. And I think that's helped me also get back into enjoying those. No, we're still going to do the music deep dives. That's what I'm saying. Is I enjoy making those so much. And I love learning about an industry that has my heart. And also sharing any knowledge I accumulated over the years of that industry. That I think sometimes you have to refocus and remember it's okay to do some stuff that is really kind of for you. And hopefully there's an audience that'll enjoy it. But if you only put out content you think others will like and you don't enjoy, that's not sustainable either. Right.
I also think there's a few different things. Like sometimes an idea, it's just the wrong time for it. Like if your channel grows to 50,000 subscribers and it's a joining of games and music and all these different things, that those series might do a lot better at that point, because they might interest enough of the people who are already there to go share it around and put it different places, and you already just have an audience for those topics. Especially at the beginning, it doesn't mean that those ideas are bad, it just means that there's not an audience for it then later on you can gauge if that is just something that other people like to do. But like you said, it is still about doing content that you like as well. And I think a lot of creators look at that, especially if you're doing other content that is already, because at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest thing is you can't always do content that is your favorite. Like I think every creator has a thing that is their favorite thing that they love doing. For instance, like let's say Jacksepticeye's favorite video is meme time, but if he did a meme time every single day, and he's talked about this before, I think he actually says he very much enjoys meme time the most. If he did that every single day, the memes that he looks at would just be kind of bad and boring
or repetitive.
The content would just start to be repetitive because it's just him commenting on like similar things. The audience might just get sick of it and like stop watching the and he might get bored of it. Like it might stop being his favorite thing because he's doing it so much, that's there. And so that doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy all the content you make, because at the end of the day you should enjoy what you make. However, your favorite thing, right? Like your music thing's your favorite thing, that is, you should always do something that's your favorite. You should always have a favorite thing that you're doing, that you do at the appropriate times for it. But if you do that for everything, if everything's going to be your favorite thing, then it's not really sustainable, especially if it's things that people don't enjoy,
Right, if everything's your passion project, then you're not going to be able to maintain a career. But I do agree with, you should enjoy everything you do, because I think when you put out content that you clearly don't like doing, it shows.
People can tell.
Yeah, your viewers can tell that you're not exactly stoked on the content you're putting out. And I always want to put out content that excites me as well. It's why I've taken breaks from things before. It's why I've stepped away from things before to reevaluate how I wanted to approach them, because I only want to put out content that I'm enjoying making, and then that will translate to the viewer.
Right.
I think it's just the best way.
I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but the thought process behind, I'm going to talk a lot about Rooster Teeth because I actually know a lot about of the beginning, and they're actually a super interesting startup story because they started before YouTube, and they were basically the first like viral company, you know, like first viral like whole channel. Like there were other people doing things at the time, like there was Homestar Runner, and then you had Newgrounds that was a whole cacophony of things. But when they started, they made their Red versus Blue Machinima, and when it came to making other content, they always followed if we make content for us that we would laugh at and we would enjoy, it's the internet. So there are other people out there that are going to do that. So as long as we like the content that we're making, there will be other people out there that like it as well. So basically, we talk about this all the time when we talk about making jokes. We make jokes for ourselves because we're going to laugh, and there's probably other people out there that are also going to laugh at those jokes, you know?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with content, you know? So as long as you're making something that you know you would enjoy, there are probably other people that are out there that are going to enjoy it. And I think the biggest problem that happens now is the internet is, so because this is back before that, you know, no YouTube or anything, so it was way easier for people to find things, but it's so saturated now that people get so caught up in the audience that they currently have that they hyper focus on doing everything specifically for that audience. And I think that's when they stop enjoying their content, you know?
Yes.
And Ludwig talked about that too, where he just talked about doing games over and over and over, and these people are playing these games even though they're not enjoying that content. And he said, like, at some point you're going to make this video that works, but at some point you're going to have to stop. You know, at some point it's not going to be the thing that you want to do and that you need to do, and so you'll have to change. And so I think that's, you know, important to remember as well. But yeah, if you stop enjoying it, like, people will be able to tell. But I also think people, if you're a channel that does something and you have a series, let's say like your In Geek This Week series is like your most watched video, you know, like everyone you put up gets 500,000 views, you know,
For sure.
And you stop enjoying it for some reason, you know, and you're like, you know what, I really want to do one that's focused specifically on just video games, or like just TV shows or something. Like, you're like, I really hate talking about all this other stuff. I really just want to do a thing that talks about TV shows that I'm watching, you know, and I really am not enjoying doing In Geek This Week. And you start doing the TV show one and it gets like 100,000 views. That doesn't mean if you put another 3 out, it's not going to start gaining the traction, because you have some of the people from In Geek This Week that would cross over. You would then have people who are like, I really watch this for this thing, so I'm gonna like back out. But you have more people that go, oh, I really like TV shows, so I'm gonna start watching this again. I think people don't always give their new thing enough time to like go on and like move forward, you know?
I agree.
Because I think there's definitely that adjustment period, and I think people like put that first video up and they go 100,000 views. I have to just go back to doing In Geek This Week, even though I don't like it, you know?
And I actually semi on that, but I want to also get back to the revenue streams and get your opinion on something. So we've talked about having different revenue streams, and I think especially when it comes to social media sites, something that helps make them individual is that you're not going to post the same content on all of them. So I've been thinking a little bit about the fact that, as we've talked, we can put up the podcast, we can put up gameplay on YouTube. And while I agree with Ludwig that there's a way better algorithm on YouTube to discovery than there is on Twitch, and I think that is such a beneficial thing to take advantage of, I also wonder, though, if you are someone who follows me on Twitch, you're not going to then go consume that content again on YouTube. So I understand it's a different audience in theory, but is that worth it, or is that detracting from your audience because you're technically recycling what you've done?
So I think there's a few different things, right? I think if you were just a person that posted your Twitch content on YouTube, you are using YouTube as a discovery platform where your main platform is Twitch. And that is where that is what you're doing. So you actually don't really care if the Twitch people don't want your YouTube, because you want YouTube to just be the platform where people go and discover it, you know? And that's not a main platform you're focusing on. And if you want YouTube to be the big thing and you're just streaming to get content, then you're also going to be posting other content on YouTube that you're not just streaming on on Twitch. And so YouTube becomes a discovery platform for Twitch, but it also becomes a place where there's other things as well. So in your case, if you're going to be posting some of your Twitch stuff on YouTube, you have other content on your YouTube. So you're using YouTube as a discovery platform for Twitch, as well as for people on Twitch who are going to go and watch your other content. They're going to watch your In Geek This Week. They're going to watch your music deep dives. They're going to watch your album reviews. They're going to watch all of your vlogs. Like, they're going to do all of that stuff as well. So you're kind of getting like that nice cross platform. So I think it depends on what your main goal is, because I think there are people who recycle a lot of content because they just want a cohesive brand, and I think they know that not everyone's on every platform. So if you do just copy your content onto everything, if your audiences on each of those platforms is different enough, you're getting the most information out there.
Yes.
As an example, people will post a video on TikTok, post that same video to Twitter, and post that same video on Instagram, all in their own thing, because they know that they have people on TikTok that don't follow Instagram or Twitter. They have people on Twitter who don't follow Instagram or TikTok, and they have people on Twitter that don't follow TikTok or Instagram. So they are just creating a cohesion so that way all of their fans know about the content that is there.
I want to say it's very interesting, all the discussion going on in chat about using YouTube. And I wanted to touch on Unicorn saying that it works best with highlights, because what's interesting is actually how I first got into Twitch, obviously besides Beta and finding his posts for Nerds Alive and everything. The way I got into Twitch really was I watched people post their entire stream on YouTube, because for me, those were perfect videos while I'm doing something else that was in the background. Like, I would go and do my chores and I'd listen to that in the background. And I really enjoyed that. And that might be silly to some people, but for me, those were the perfect videos. Long ones that I didn't have to keep clicking on another video because I knew I had hours of chores to do. So I just clicked play on their entire playthrough. And that was so perfect for me. But also, I don't typically watch those people on stream because those are usually the bigger streamers that I've watched. And I don't as much see the benefit for me as the kind of consumer I am in being in those streams, because I'm not going to interact with the chat anyway, that watching it on YouTube is pretty much what I'd be getting out of it anyway.
Yeah, so I think when I started watching YouTube, like the very first YouTube videos I used to watch, besides all the stupid, silly, like voiceover things of cartoons like SpongeBob, when gaming was first there, the very first thing that was really up on YouTube that was the easiest to watch was commentaries. It was just people playing mostly Call of Duty, and they would get a gameplay that was really good, and they would just talk over it. And most of the time, they would just talk about their what they were doing. They basically talked about it almost like when you stream. When you stream, you're just kind of talking about what your thought process as you're going through. That's basically what they treat these videos as. They were like, so I decided to like post up here because there's usually 5 or 6 people that run down the middle, and I can kill all of them and get this kill streak. And then they're just basically telling you what their thought process is, and that a lot of people I think really like that because it helps them think about things from a different perspective and get better at video games. And also, it was just interesting to see other people play, and that was so weird to other people. Like that was like, there are so many talk shows that even back then made fun of people watching. They were like, there's these YouTube gaming videos, and like people are watching people play Call of Duty. This is ridiculous. Like, how stupid is that? Just like they do with streaming now, where they're just like, people watch people live play games. Like,
why aren't they just playing the game? That's so dumb. Yep.
But it came at it like that time when they did that. It was at the time where there was a really huge dip in esports. Like, there was a very large like lull, and there were like TV, like G4 and other gaming TV channels were going away. That's because most of that content was just, it was boring because it was made by a TV studio, so it didn't really have anything to fucking do with gaming. But it had people just really interested because it was real people. It was like real people that were just playing their game. You probably played against them. You might have gotten killed by them, and you got to like see these people do this. I think that then transitioned into people playing a full game, because at the time, these commentary videos had to be less than like 10 minutes. Otherwise, it didn't get picked up by the algorithm. People didn't watch it. Like, the shorter the video, the better. That started to change with YouTube's algorithm, but then people were like, if I put up a full video of like a full game like Fallout or Oblivion or like a story game, or even just playing like Call of Duty's campaign, or like Halo's campaign, or like would people watch that? And I think that was like the birth of like the Let's Play era, where people were playing these games, and I started to watch those religiously. I think I watched maybe, God, I want to say 10 or 12 different people fully play through Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Oblivion, Skyrim, Knights of the Republic. Like, I watched these people play through these full versions of games a ton, and at the time they used to have to cut them down into 10-minute parts. So you would actually, in your case where you said you would just hit play and you would have to like do the whole thing, you actually couldn't even have videos that were longer than 15 minutes at the time. And if you could, they were still limited to like an hour back then or whatever. So people would cut them up into 10-minute parts, because that would actually be better for the algorithm anyway as well, to like pick them up. So you would go find a playlist and you'd have to play all of these parts. But yeah, I did exactly what you did. You would just hit play and you just watch this person play this game and just like talk about it. And it was interesting just to be able to do other things. Like, those were my podcasts in a sense, like now there's actual podcasts, but when I was a kid I was like, I don't want to listen to people talk about life. I want to watch this video game, this guy talk about like how much fun he's having or what he's doing and stuff like that, so it's super interesting. But if I watched those people's streams and I was way less interested, because watching a stream live, you can put it on the background, you can lurk and stuff like that, but you feel like you more want to engage if you're doing that, and those very much were just not things to engage with, like they were way better to just watch someone play a game and go through the thought process. Like, I see Phil mentioning Jackson playing Subnautica,
and I agree completely with that. I also think that's part of why I'll watch the YouTube version, because even though it could be a 2 or 3 hour video, the whole thing is, if they die somewhere, they typically cut out where they had to go to get back to where they were. So at the very least, I don't have to watch the same fucking piece to get back to where we are. I just watch it straight on through. And because I get so fucking annoyed watching them do it again and again. I'm like, if I wanted to see that, then I would have watched your stream. But I don't want to see that. I want to see the whole thing through and your commentary on the whole thing through. But I don't want to see each time you've messed up.
Jack Subsky does a really, really good job of that in his videos, and a lot of other people do too, but it very specifically in his Last of Us 2 Let's Play, it's like 12 parts. They're all like an hour and a half-ish long. The game itself is about 20-something hours, so the fact that he was able to cut it into 16 hours, he cut out a huge chunk of him like walking around, of him dying and having to go back. If he wanted to go explore something and there was really nothing there's nothing interesting, he just cut it out. If he was like trying to figure out a puzzle and it took really long for him to figure out, he would just cut it out and cut to when he figured out what the puzzle was. Like all of that attributes to you like losing focus. So if you were watching this cohesive thing now and it cuts away, and like I religiously just sat there, like I didn't put it on background, I actually watched him play it, and it was interesting the whole time, because he cut out all the things that when you're playing the game aren't boring, because you're just moving around and you're the one thinking about where to look or whatever. But if you're watching it, it gets boring because you're not doing any of that stuff, So yeah, like I think definitely having the editing is a thing that's on its side. I think there's a place for all of those different things though. I think there's a place for highlights, because I actually love watching I watch a few streamers who do monthly highlights, and they'll do like May of 2021,
That's
and they'll
just
cool. Like post their highlights from their thing. Yeah, and it's like, I didn't get to see what this month they played, like Yakuza and like Super Mario Odyssey and some other obscure game that I have no idea about. So I wasn't really interested in watching those streams, but you go watch the highlights and you just get to see like the funny moments, and you get to see their like reactions to them. But also, I enjoy watching the full content as well. So, like, if you did a game where you were gonna do a full Let's Play of it, right? And you went through and you were gonna post that on YouTube, you have the control to then edit it out. So you could still do the full play, you could still do all the things, but all the moments where you pause and talk to chat for 20 minutes, you can cut out. You can have that like manipulation around it to be able to kind of have it set for all your different platforms to, make the people happy with whatever they want, you know?
This is exactly the problem. Sorry, that was really funny. Yes, but it is, because I think you want to engage more. But I will say we are trying out engaging a little less with chat and podcast because of the potential to upload this somewhere else, but also in addition because then you really can treat this like a podcast. You don't feel as forced in theory to interact. That doesn't mean it can't be distracting. I absolutely understand that. I feel that way about some videos I watch too, where I'm like, okay, I'm a little too invested that I can't do this while I'm trying to be productive. But I overall like this idea of utilizing the content on another platform as long as I do something to it. Like if it's condensing it a little bit, if it's doing highlight reels as well. I think I was more worried that it'd be too much of just straight recycling the content, but I see now that it's not.
Yeah, as long as, like, even I think YouTube is always going to be a place that is more polished, you know? Like, you're always going to, you know, even if you do your small in between like little bits for things, you're still going to be able to have control over it. You're going to add in sound effects or like little funny like meme videos or just funny editing tricks with camera and stuff like that. You'll be able to just like cut and make it more concise and be able to have like that little bit of storytelling through that. Whereas Twitch is always just going to be long form and people sort of get that behind the scenes, like get to be there when it happens kind of thing. And I think that there are audiences for both of those things, you know? I think some people like if I miss a Jacksepticeye stream, I don't go back and always watch the VOD unless I know it's something he's not going to put on YouTube, because then I get to watch the cool edited, like, awesome version too. But the fact that you're editing it down and everything like that still means that those people that watch the stream get to see what he did with it. You know, they have this like new perspective when they watch it. You know, obviously it's a little different with a full play because there's going to be a lot less like random jokes in there, because if you want to edit these things and actually put them out every day because you want the whole thing to be out in a week or whatever, then you're not going to have time to sit there and like go through 2 hours of footage and then add in the little tiny jokes or whatever. You know, and I think a lot of stuff also just comes with like practice and stuff too. But yeah, like you will have those times where you get to, you know, change what's there. Yoink and twist, you know? You get to
I still hate that. I can respect that Ludwig did provide a lot of great advice, but he could have named it anything. And I know part of it was because he knew people would be hung up on that name, but fucking hate it. Yoink and twist makes me want to throw up. If you didn't see the video, we'll link it in a second. There's a Ludwig video that he explains some tips on streaming, and in one of them he said you can see what other people are doing, you can yoink that content and twist it. And I was just like, could you name it anything else?
Yes.
That doesn't make me want to vomit. Time
Enjoy
to get
TK. Yes. Enjoy either, whatever the actual autocorrect is, PK.
I am. Have a good time. Amazing.
But yeah, I think there's a way to like mentally work all of that stuff in like ahead of time in a way and be able to not have it be like a thing that is like mentally blocking or you know, might keep you from following one specific path for something. Because I think like one of the hardest things I always think about for streams is the audience is great in streams because they will clip things that they find funny, and I think that is a huge sign that thing was actually funny because they thought it was funny enough to clip it.
It's also just so nice because it's such an easy way for a streamer to get more content, and it has viewer engagement in making that content. So I really do like that.
The downside to that, though, is there are just sometimes where viewers are not in the place that they're gonna clip it, you know? Like, they still find it funny, they still enjoy it, like, they just don't clip it. Like, I've had a lot, like, most of the clips, I think, on Nerds Alive that are popular, that Tice used in his video, I I had clipped a lot of them, or we went back and clipped because they were videos that you guys were into. Like we went back and found it, and I think that's the hardest thing because there are things that you say or do that you know just from the mind of you making videos or clips or whatever. Because honestly, when I do streams and stuff like that, in my mind, even when I watch your streams, I think of the highlight videos, you know, that I get to make, like your intro video, like just like small in between highlight videos. Like my mind just sort of thinks in that way. Like I think it's just always thought in the way of just like how to piece that stuff together. So I will do something and I will think that would be a really funny clip to put in a specific spot or whatever, but I'm not just gonna say, hey, someone clip that. I guess I could, but you know, I know in my head I can just go back and find this part and just do that. And I think that's where I started using like stream markers more and being able to like do that, especially when you're getting video content. If you know where like you're going to be putting a video on YouTube, for instance, and you know there's a place where you can put a very funny joke or like meme or whatever, like a, you know, I'm fast as fuck, boy. You're like, oh, that'd be really great after I said this thing. I'm not going to say it right now because that would ruin the joke or whatever. But if you just find a way to mark that stuff, it just makes your job so much easier going down, because that's always the hardest thing, is just remembering where it was, because you don't want to sit there and watch your 6 hours you know, and like clip through and you're like, fuck, it was probably around 2 hours, but like it could have been around hour 5, I don't know, because like it all blends together about the time. So you know, I think you start to just learn the tricks behind finding the, like, remembering the spots or being able to just add markers to spots. Like I now keep a little notepad on my computer using the sticky notes app, where if I'm watching someone stream or I'm streaming, I can just tab out, add the timestamp really quickly, and then just kind of go back.
Well, that's narcissism, Philip. I mean, that's fine though. No, okay. I actually wanted to talk about yesterday. We watched Inside. We brought up that we were going to probably talk about it. We watched Bo Burnham's Inside, and I think that super fits into the whole discussion of today. And making content, and also kind of the existential dread we've all been going through. And I think it's interesting to see it from the perspective of someone who I would view as being incredibly successful. And I know he probably himself would also consider himself decently successful. But to know that he doesn't feel the way I think some of us would perceive we would feel in that same position.
Right, because I think I think a lot of people have talked about that before too, and I think it is I think people think that when you get to a point like that, and I know for a fact Jacksepticeye has talked about this, how could you not be happy when
Are you happy?
You know? Yikes. And if you think about it, like, yeah, that's probably true. Like Jacksepticeye from 10 years ago when he made his first video, or 8 years ago, whatever the fuck it was, and he put it up and it got 10 views, you would say, yeah, if I have a YouTube channel that's got 25 million subscribers, I'm gonna be happy, you know? But I think the way most people's brains work is not necessarily compartmentalization, but just like you tend to deal with the most like pertinent problem, you know? So if you're poor and you have to work a 9-to-5 job and you just have to survive, your needs are survival, and you're going to be sad because like, I need to work this shitty job and I need to just pay these bills, and your life is constantly thinking about that stuff. If you remove those obstacles, you're then going to start being like, okay, what else was there? Well, I'm not super happy with the way that like this turned out, and I very much neglected personal relationships, and so I'm sad because I don't have any like personal connections. If you remove those barriers, there's just other things, like no one's going to be the perfect human. And so I think when people are in their position, right, like the people who are watching Bo Burnham are stuck in shitty 9-to-5 jobs. They might want to do content creation, maybe not. They might want to you know, perform, and you're looking at that and you're like, well, he's super successful, he's had books, he's done all these live performances that people really love, he has you know, he's friends with like celebrities, he made a movie. Like you're looking at all this stuff and you're like, how can you not be happy? You know, like how could you be upset with that? And we are looking at it from the point where we haven't had those other barriers removed for us yet, you know? And he's at the point where he's done that, and he his goal, and you could tell that his goal was always to try and like, obviously after the success, his goal was to try and better the world. You know, he wanted to definitely like see the world and make people laugh. You know, I think that's a lot of people who go into comedy want to push their own sadness away by uplifting other people, you know?
What?
And like like that is also very much the way that I look at whatever. I found a really old cringy Facebook post I made in like 2013 that was, I will probably never be happy, but as long as every day I can get up and make someone else smile, then I'm content with my life. That was a long time ago. It's really cringy, but the sentiment in a way is still one that is the way I think a lot of comedians think about doing that stuff. And he very much is someone that does that. And if you've seen interviews he's done before the pandemic, when he was talking about very much similar things, you know, why would you wanna, he did, I forget exactly what it was, but he said all these boomers are talking about kids staring at their phones the whole time. And he said, but why would I want to look up at a world that you fucked up? You know, like, you're complaining that these kids aren't looking up from their phones and looking at the world, but why would I want to look up to a world that you guys ruined? You know, and that this shitty
we're dealing
world,
with the mess of what you created.
Right. He's like, of course I would want a dissociative disorder if I had to look up at this shitty world, and if that's why all these kids are just staring at their phones and escaping into that thing, which is obviously a little over the top, but also a very good point, you know, like
right.
that it's still why if I know this world is shitty, and I know like I know that dealing with the political situation for a lot of people is really shitty, and I know dealing with now this pandemic is really shitty, but even before that, just dealing with like the big issues for a lot of people who weren't grown up to be trained on how to handle that stuff, why would they want to look up at the world and like take that all in when they could just take in this fake happy social media world and deal with like self-inclusive problems, you know?
Yes.
And like, I think that is huge in his point of just like all of this stuff and these people that look and say, how can you not be happy and all this stuff, because he still has to look up at the same shitty world, you know? He has to just look at it from a different view. Look at it in a place where he has money and can afford these things, but it doesn't change the fact that he still has to look at this world.
Right, the world's still it's not better in the way he would have wanted it to be.
Right.
He's been. I think it's very interesting because it's not a mindset that we're accustomed to in the U.S. because we're very much a think for yourself. If I'm doing well, that's what matters, and that's not a very big thing in other cultures. Most other cultures care about the group, the collective,
right.
How the group is doing benefits the individual, and very much we are taught the opposite in America, where it's, if I'm doing well, that's what matters. That's what's going to benefit me. That's going to benefit my life. That's going to make me happy.
Right, and I think you have those pockets, but I still think, even on a large scale with the entire world, it is still, all of it still fucked up. Like, because even the places that have things that are better off than the United States, like in Inside, he talks a lot about capitalism and how we are basically uplifting these brands and giving them free advertising because they are doing these memes, you know, like that's basically, we are saving them thousands and millions of dollars in advertising by just like, they did a funny haha, like Wendy's, for instance. Like, Wendy's save billions of dollars by just having a Twitter account that's like fucking claps back at people, you know? And there are other places that don't necessarily run off of capitalism who still have problems that are run by huge issues. Even though capitalism is a big thing, there's still those places, they are still run by brands in a way, because I think industries just sort of run the world. Even if your specific government doesn't run the world that way, like that still has influence over a lot of the other aspects of life everywhere. And you really wouldn't be able to get to that until the entire world agreed on like a specific like way to function, and that's never going to happen, you know? Happening. But you know, because even in like super nice like Sweden, you know, you're still gonna have places that are run by these brands in a way. The government keeps them safe from getting like too close to like personal information, and like also keeps people healthy by being able to go to therapists for free and things like that. Like there are ways that they're countering that. It doesn't change that the core problem is still affecting everybody.
No,
all these other governments are just changing.
Things are being handled differently,
trying to counteract it. Right.
Yes.
And we just don't have that, you know.
But I also found it interesting, and I know most of Bo's special and most of what Bo does is incredibly self-reflective while also mocking the fact that he's being self-reflective. And I just wonder, because he comes from currently a more privileged place than a lot of people, I wonder at what point is you're claiming to be introspective, you're claiming to be self-reflective and wanting to better yourself, at what point does it just come off as like condescending? At what point does it just come off as, and I don't mean him in particular as much as I mean like non-comedians, right. Like at what like, not that you should ever stop doing those things, but it's almost like each time it's spoken about, each time we ever say like, oh, I super was this bad person and I like know that I did these bad things and yada yada yada, as he said, you're not absolved of it. So is constantly bringing attention to it almost someone's indirect way of trying to absolve themselves of it? Sorry, I know that was a bunch of shit at once.
No. I think a lot about that in the way of just that specific question. If apologizing, if you are just doing it to then, does it lose its like genuineness, you know? Like, is that also a thing too? I think I don't know if you retweeted or liked or something, but I saw a post from I think it was Craig Owens, right? He's like a singer. Is it Craig? I forget his last name. Yeah. He did like a tweet where someone had like messaged him and said that like he plucks his eyebrows. Craig, thank you.
He streams actually. Yeah. He's a drummer.
Someone had made fun of him for plucking his eyebrows and said that only girls can do that, which is ridiculous and stupid and
so odd.
So stupid. And so he just had responded with like, hey man, if you're gonna make fun of me, like don't like leave your face open. I just looked at your face and you could really use an eyebrow waxing. Maybe you'll have sex if you do that, you know. Maybe that's
I didn't even see that part. Yikes.
That was the second part of the message.
Okay,
it was,
I saw the first part.
it was a joke.
Yeah.
The next part in the thread, he said, I apparently upset some people by the virgin joke, you know, and he said that there were just a lot of people who were offended by that, and he said there were a lot of asexual that said that's actually really offensive to people that just might not have
might not want
sex for their own reasons, which would include people who are absent and things like that too. You know, he immediately apologized, and then he also said, but I'm going to keep the joke up because like it happened and whatever. And so that to me was such a very confusing like thread, because it turned into, it was joke, and then it was message, I apologize for this joke. Then it was another message that said, but I'm not going to remove it because I'm not a bitch or something, you know. And then it like, I think that plays into the point. It's like being self-aware, but
the reason I specifically liked that, and I remember why I did, is I personally get very frustrated with people who feel it's okay to attack people online, especially when they're attacking someone who has more notoriety, is bigger than them, and they think that they're free from consequence when they do that. And that
correct.
It's they always point the finger at the bigger person for calling them out, because they're like, you sent all your haters to me. You did something inappropriate. You did something rude, and you expected no consequences. So I think my initial like knee jerk to that was, I do believe, while I don't necessarily agree with the wording used, I don't necessarily agree with fighting fire with fire, I do agree that there's nothing, I don't support people that go after someone and expect no consequences. Agreed. And I support someone sticking up for themselves and saying, no, like, I'm actually going to call you out because you don't expect me to call you out, and that was inappropriate for you to do that. I don't necessarily think I'd go about it the same way.
No,
but
I agree. I agree, and I think I also liked the tweet after I saw it too. Like, I agree with I don't even necessarily disagree with keeping the joke up, because I think like
I think you are right though in my opinion. In that sense, if I were to say, hey, I made a joke that was offensive and I don't stand by it anymore, I would then say that I've taken that joke down. That's what I would have done, and I would have taken it down. Granted, you can also see things like Phil DeFranco keeps up some videos that show what he was like before. But overwhelmingly, if it's something that he thinks is disgusting now, if he thinks is something that's sexist, can be seen as homophobic, or I'm not saying those are actual terms he's used. I'm saying if he says anything that he once posted no longer reflects who he is, he does take it down. While there is some level of you want to prove and show your growth, and I do think that is important because it's a fine line of you want to show that you're not that person anymore, so you're okay showing your mistakes. But I think there's a difference between showing your mistakes when it's little things and you're learning versus you outright were offensive and you are not that person anymore, so why would you want that content up anymore? That doesn't reflect you anymore. What if someone's first introduction to you was that old content that is nothing like who you are anymore? You shouldn't, in my head, want that up anymore.
Right. I also think I think the comedian in me knows that any joke is gonna offend someone. Like, there's really no humor that doesn't have someone. Well, let me ask you something, and I'm not putting you on the spot because I also really can't think of one either.
You're saying give an example. It's not.
Can you think of a joke that is non-offensive to like anyone? You know,
I feel like the jokes that are
a knock joke or whatever, but like, you know.
But I think jokes that where someone is talking about they did something clumsy during the day, that's not offensive to anyone. I think arguably that wouldn't be.
If you are debilitated by clumsiness, like if you're a very clumsy person and you're it's debilitating to you because of that, you know, that would offend you because that's a real struggle for you, and other people are making jokes at it.
No, I get,
perceive it as that. Not saying they do.
I think it's also in delivery. So if I'm delivering it and I'm saying I'm a fucking dumbass because I'm clumsy and I can't walk straight or something, and I sound ignorant to people who have that struggle, I think that is different than phrasing it as I embarrassed myself like crazy today. I tripped in front of my crush. I then also like fell in a pile of dog shit. Like, I think there are differences in presentation, but I'm not disagreeing with you in the fact that there is, of course, with any joke, a chance you could offend someone because you have different humor, because anyone can take and interpret anything based on their life, their circumstances.
Right, like Bernie Burns made a really good point where he said that a lot of humor is going to offend people, you know, like that there's always going to just be groups of people, because at some point he's like, you can't really make a joke about having a really nice life and a nice house and you go home and you're happy at the end of the day. Like, that's, you know, they're just be like, oh, well, you know, like, good for you. It's not funny, but like, that's good. Like, but I went to a comedy show. I didn't go to like, let me hear your life story about how nice your life is, you know?
I like to hear that.
And I think that
I think though,
I'm not saying there's no jokes that don't offend people, by the way, because
no,
like there are obviously like knock jokes and
but I'm also going to say that I think the comedians that typically will run into they have offensive jokes, and I'm not saying this is all the case. Of course, there are people who actually say very offensive things, but I think some people who are going to run into it are the ones who are speaking about hot topics, social issues. Anyone who's talking about things that actually impact people's lives, that is, of course, going to have knee-jerk reactions from people.
No, of course. Yeah, I'm not like that. That is always going to happen. I'm not defending any of those people who are going to teeter on that line, or the people who are complaining that like it's impossible to do comedy or whatever. Like, I'm not going to
no, because I also think that's ignorant.
That's not true.
Sorry.
I'm just saying that you, as a comedian, if you're doing a joke and it offends a specific group of people, unless it is something that is so like if you made a joke about clumsy people and someone came up and they were like, that really offended me because I'm really clumsy, don't watch my comedy. Like, you know, like, because you're never gonna make anyone happy, because
I agree on that.
Start listening to every single person that becomes offended, it's just like if someone says, I'm not happy with the way this content turned out, you're never going to have the perfect content for everyone, you know?
Right, but I think there are exceptions where I do understand why it's not even funny. You know, like there are jokes we used to make that we at one point deemed were okay and no longer are.
agree with that.
So I think though those would be different. And for instance, like in Bo Burnham's special, there was a song about white women Instagram. And yes, in theory, people could be offended by that.
100%.
It's pretty fucking funny and lighthearted. And that's coming from a white woman with an Instagram.
Right. You also, like, by the way, you don't do those pictures though. But I think you could see that
that's not saying I never have. And that's also, I've also seen so many people take it the way that I feel like is appropriate. Where like, you have to be able to laugh at yourself. Like some things aren't meant as an attack. I don't think that song was an attack. I don't think he was attacking white women who post those Instagram photos. It was all in jest, and I do think the majority of people took it that way because of the way he presented it. It was meant lighthearted.
That's what I'm saying though. Like he's gonna have people who are going to say that is really messed up. They were just trying to have a good day on their birthday, so they took that picture, or they wanted to just be very creative, and he's shitting on their creativity. There are gonna be people who are saying that, you know, like there are people out there who probably have already posted that and said, I didn't find this very funny just because my Instagram looks this way, so people are now making fun of me because of it or whatever, you know, like there are gonna be those people. That doesn't mean you should go and apologize for that joke though, you know?
No, I agree with that.
That is just like the way it is. That's my point. Like what you said, that's my point, is that there are gonna be jokes that are going to offend certain people.
Yes. Okay, I agree.
That means those people shouldn't watch that thing. Like, I think that's like the
dark humor comedy. And I know Bo does that, but there's a specific.
We watch Daniel Sloss. I'm going to assume
who it is.
You're talking about him.
That's who it is. Daniel Sloss is an incredibly dark comedian, and
he makes fun of religion. He makes fun of he makes dark jokes about death, and he's talked about like LGBTQ and stuff like that in a way that could be seen as offensive, but it's all from a place of like comedy, and from a place of he is saying he still understands those situations, and also he's not doing it in a way to offend people just to be offensive. He's not using words that are meant to be derogatory, and I think that's a huge point of it. Right. People who are specifically doing jokes about the LGBTQIA2+, who use terms that are inherently derogatory, do it with the intent of just making a mockery of the community. He is not doing that, and so I view that differently. But I was more saying that his dark humor is not for everyone. Not everyone wants to go to a fucking comedy show and hear about death and murder, and he even talked about, not that he didn't make a joke of this, but he talked about sexual assault multiple times in things I've seen him do. And not everyone's wanting to go to a show that could potentially talk about that. And that was in zero way a joke. Like, I will say I do appreciate that he doesn't make jokes of things that need to have a serious discussion. Right. And I think that's something that the community and people at large can appreciate. But yes, I absolutely have to be in the mood to want to watch his specials of dark humor, because if I'm not in a good headspace, I don't want to just hear the saddest shit. I don't. And so it could be offensive to someone who also never wants to hear that. But I also think... Sorry. No, good. No, I was just going to say that I've met people who don't like his comedy because of that. Like, they just don't like, and they don't think he's a good comedian because of that stuff, you know? And I think comedy's always been an opinionated thing, you know? Like, and there's never been... That's why comedies aren't even in the Oscars, because they don't, like... You know, you can't really judge them against other like forms of creation in that standard, you know? Like, it's just like, that's just not how comedy works, you know?
Yes. So I just wanted to quickly touch on what Lara said. The one thing I try to be careful of is saying the special snowflake stuff, because I feel like typically I've actually found most people who used to use those terms, they themselves are more and I'm not saying you are, sorry, this is super not me attacking you. They themselves have shown to be more offended by a lot of things. But I will agree with you in the sense, and it's what Beat and I have been talking about, that people will go to comedy shows almost with the intent of being upset by it. Right. And it's odd that you wouldn't research the comedian you're going to see when you're going to go pay for a show, because there is a chance it's not your comedy. I've even been to comedy shows that I wasn't offended at, but it wasn't funny to me. So, and I went with like family and they wanted to go see this comedian, and I was not the target demographic. It was definitely for people like my parents' age. The jokes were mostly about getting old. Right. And I just was like, I don't really understand all these things. These aren't things I inherently find funny, and I'm just not the appropriate person to be watching it. So I do think there is an ignorance in terms of people who just go to comedy shows and then get incredibly offended by the comedians they're seeing if they went and planned to see that comedian. I will also say, though, there are shows you can go to where there are guest appearances, and I can more understand why, if there's a guest that's makes incredibly offensive to you content, why you would be upset at that show, because you did not plan to see that performer. So I would understand if it's a surprise appearance by a really big comedian that you don't care to see. It's the same as if you go to it's not the same in terms of offense, but it's the same if you go to any type of show, a concert, and there's a guest performer and it's someone you don't care for, and you're like, I didn't pay for this. I didn't want to see this person get on stage.
There's a really funny clip of a comedian who I very much enjoy, and he's not very big. He does crowd work. His name's Andrew Schultz. He does mostly stuff on YouTube, but I think he also
I know him
on his website. He's very, very funny. I very much enjoy his content. The thing I actually enjoy about him is he makes very funny, like, stereotypical jokes about people who are in the audience, but he then immediately, like, one, obviously everyone's in on, like, everyone's laughing with each other. He also then comes from a place of understanding that culture. Like, he's just very knowledgeable about world culture, and so when he makes fun of something, he then goes, no, I'm kidding, like, I know that you guys have this problem here and this problem, and I know that, like, this, you know, it's very serious and stuff like that, you know, and you know, and then he comes from a place of like, oh, but I know you guys have these, like, really cool you know, like, this really cool food that's really cool, and you guys have, like, oh, this really cool, like parade that you guys do that in this honor stuff. Like, he's very knowledgeable about that stuff, and he just comes from a place of like, I'm just making the jokes because I understand it, you know? Like, if I've just made American jokes about fucking 4th of July and hamburgers, like, yeah, if I'm in a foreign place and someone's just being like, you guys are all just fat and loud, you know? Like, yeah, that's offensive. But if it said like, oh yeah, you know, you're with Karen at the barbecue and she's just screaming about her hot dog being overcooked, I'd be like, oh, that's funny, because then they could start talking about, like, whatever. But, you know, and you know,
I think it's the learning to laugh at yourselves as a group is what I think makes a comedy show typically successful. But if it's gonna touch on stuff that could be offensive, but I will say I also fucking hate comedy shows that call out anyone in the audience. I will light myself on fire.
Well, so that's the thing too. There was actually one lady in the back who had, like, said something, and he started like he's a crowd, he works the crowd, like, that's the entire, like, that's what he is, a crowd worker.
Right, but then I wouldn't go to that show. I would have looked into him and been like, exactly. That does not make sense.
Or you would sit in the back and you just not say anything, you know? Like, that's the whole point, because
if you speak up at a comedy show, that's on you. You speak up at a comedy show, you're asking to be
or in a crowd work shows, the front row is there for that, you know? Like, they are specifically put there because they are okay with being crowd worked. And there was one woman who had said something, and he was like doing a back and forth with her, and she said, can you just, like, move on? He's like, are you, like, upset? And she was like, yeah. She's like, I don't know why you're doing this. He's like, lady, I'm a crowd work, like, comedian. Like, what? Like, you came to the show, you paid, this is what I do. Like, you were here and you made a comment and spoke up to me, I am going to respond. That's what I do. Like, this is,
it's just so extra odd to go to like, coming from someone who obviously would light myself on fire if the comedy turned to speak to me. Comedian. But I also couldn't imagine being dumb enough, being the person I am. I couldn't imagine then also speaking up and heckling the comedian and then acting surprised that I was responded to. I'm not going to speak up at a comedy show. Leave me the fuck alone. I'll leave you the fuck alone. But I also... odds of me going to a comedian that's known for crowd work, slim. Unless I know they really only go to the first couple rows.
No,
slim.
I would. Well, that's it. Like, most of the time they do that so because they know that people want to go watch it, but they don't want to participate in it, and so that's why they.
Do you have an example, PK?
So, like, I would go.
mostly out of curiosity. I'm not at all disagreeing, because I do think there are times comedians could go too far, but this honestly goes back to what we were just discussing with the streamer that I liked something of, and Beta said he responded in a jokey but harsh way to someone who said rude things to him.
Like the original
No,
tweet
I know, but
it was his like
I know,
replies were,
but it still relates to the first part, because I do think
yes,
you're not free from consequence when you go after someone that you think is bigger than you. You're not free from consequence in terms of if you are rude to someone that you think has a bigger platform than you, you don't get the grace of being anonymous anymore. You don't get the grace of them ignoring you if they don't want to, because you are being rude, disrespectful, inappropriate, and they have decided to call you on it. And I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with, in theory, calling someone out. Fairly big example, but the guy who played Kramer on Seinfeld. Oh, yeah, no, but he went on like a full racist rant.
Yeah, I think when it comes to...
I don't think that's a normal response at that point. I do think, like, at some point, if your discriminatory parts of you show their light, that's super different than just going back at someone.
I agree with you in the sense that you shouldn't be free from consequence. I wholeheartedly agree with that, which is why I like the original tweet. Like, I agree with the original tweet, and I just thought his responses were a roller coaster and very odd. But more on that, and more on what PK is more talking about, is I've definitely seen hecklers or people who respond to the hecklers take that too far. Like, they did heckle, they deserve to be called out, but they do it well beyond the fact where it's funny for the rest of the audience. They do it well beyond the fact of like, hey,
awkward.
Shut up. Like, and it's just like, you are now just like focusing on this thing. And I get it. Like, I get like, you're on stage, you're in this headspace, someone interrupts you, you're just upset. You know, we've all complained about something for an hour and a half when it was like, this was a 5-minute thing I could have complained about. And for some reason, I've talked about it for an hour and a half. Happens all the time, that they're just on stage and that's what they're doing. And I've definitely seen that happen. So to an extent, I agree. The heckler should be called out. They should be made fun of. Like, if you're drunk and you heckled, like, yeah, make fun of them. They heckled you, they interrupted your set or whatever. Like, yeah, be like, you're drunk, go home. Like, oh, like, you know, I'm here, you're the one that can't hold your liquor, whatever. Like, you know, make your joke. But I still think that it should also fit the crime in a sense, you know. Like, if he called him out for that thing, if he went on and he made this like Craig Reynolds, if he made this like 9-page essay to this guy about all the things that were wrong with him, that would be too far, you know. I would be like, you know, like, your eyebrows, also your face is stupid, also you probably can't get any girls, also you know, you probably have to struggle because you're poor. Like, if he did all of that, you know, like, that doesn't fit it, you know, because the guy made fun of his eyebrows and he made fun of his eyebrows back and made a joke, and that's why that was
right. But I don't.
Okay, you know?
My curiosity is, why do we police the person who's? And I'm not. This is more to play devil's advocate more than I necessarily wholeheartedly agree with this point, because I think I fall somewhere in the middle of it. But why are we going to police the person who's sticking up for themselves against the person who started it? And while I understand that in our brains we can say logically these two things equate and they make sense that would be in response.
You don't want to be a bully. If you become a bully, then another random person should get to come up and like start making fun of you again. Like, you know, like there's that.
Well, the reason I'm asking it though, and because I agree with you, I actually do agree that it would come off as and be bullying.
I'm very much the person who I take the high road. You know, I'm the one that doesn't respond at all. You know, like, that's just who I am as a person. But I don't think that you should never do that.
But
I think you should stand up for yourself.
My other point though is, and I've seen in a lot of artists and celebrities speak on this, is they feel that sometimes when they meet someone back equally, they continue the behavior. If they meet them back so much stronger than what they initially went at the celebrity with, that stops the behavior. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily right or not, but I'm also saying you open yourself up when you are a rude person already. When you already are trying to bully someone, you started that. So
so let me say,
why do you get to then decide what the line is?
let's take for instance that celebrities, someone does something, celebrity snaps back and they scream and they fucking freak out. They are then known as a celebrity that freaks out, and they get upset by that. You did freak out. That is what people are going to know you as, because you did just do that. No one's saying you unprovoked freaked out or whatever. There are some people that might believe that or whatever, but you then can't be upset with the consequences that you just created by going over the top. Because
that's fair. I do think everything has consequences. Nothing free of it. But also, PK, specifically with what you're saying, though, it's why I didn't say anything about the show, because I agree with you in the sense that if you're a performer, it's in your best interest for the rest of your audience to move on, because you are ignoring the fact that this is a show. You are ignoring the fact that there are other paying customers there. But I'm also still trying to give people courtesy and leeway that humans aren't perfect, and that these professionals even are going to have breaking points. Should they check themselves before they go perform if they're close to a breaking point? Absolutely. But I also have been at shows that got awkward because of hecklers and the responsive comedians. I've definitely been at those shows. I've watched numerous shows like that, and yes, as another audience member, incredibly uncomfortable. Please just stop. Kick out the heckler if they won't stop.
Well, I think that you said that if you meet with equal force, sometimes that makes the other person keep going. And
no,
I think
sorry,
in some situations,
I didn't mean just that person. I mean, sometimes I think other people think, okay, their response isn't so bad, so I too will chime in. I too will heckle. I too will bully. I too will say rude and offensive things.
I think the best heckling clips I've seen are heckler says something because they don't think they're going to get a response.
Yes.
The person shuts them down by making a joke and making fun of them. That's their equal force or whatever. Heckler sometimes shuts up. If the heckler doesn't shut up, the best way to handle it is they just tell the club to remove them.
Yeah, that's what I agree.
Or tell them, take them outside. Like, that's it. Because that guy could just keep going and take another 10 minutes of the show to make more fun of him and yell at him and make it way more awkward. But I think in a lot of the situations where you could do, I think that that's why on the internet, and mostly on the internet, but it happens real life too, people seek attention. That guy that made that comment about his eyebrows or whatever, that guy might not even believe what he said. He just wanted him to react. So they do negative things. I don't know if you've ever seen, but people, and you can see a lot of influencers talk about this, maybe not anymore, but they used to talk about it a lot, that they would get regular comments about, like, you're so shitty, like, you suck, and the person would respond and be like, wow, like, really, you're gonna say this? And they're like, oh my god, I actually really love you, you're really great, like, you know, I'm so sorry, I didn't really mean
want
that,
your
or whatever.
attention.
They're just doing it right. And so Bernie Burns does a really funny thing where he said if he ever got comments that were shitty towards him, he would actually follow them for like 10 minutes and then he would block them. So they would go to like show all their friends, like, oh my god, wait, he followed me, I'm blocked. Like, you know, which I just think is fucking hilarious.
I actually do, though, agree with the idea that your best bet dealing with, if you are a person of, you know, a higher position in society, I do think you're better off blocking. And I do think there's been a lot of negative connotations surrounding blocking, because people always think, oh, you just want to live in your echo chamber, you just want everyone who loves you. There's still a difference though between someone saying, hey, I don't love that thing you did and like, here are my issues with it, versus you look fucking stupid, why are you even a person? Like, those are different.
Right. I think the biggest thing about now is everything is not so cut and dry, you know, like there is, because people there are people who block people who, so they can continue to live in their delusional bubble of whatever they're doing, you know. There are people who are just blocking people for the right reasons though. Like there are people who are just like, I am being harassed, I am blocking this person because I'm being harassed, not because of I don't want their opinion or whatever. It is just because of that. And so I think
taking a toll on me, that's when it's not something you need to put up with anymore.
And the people who are so super against blocking think that everyone is doing it for the I just want to stay in my own bubble. You know, they think it's that cut and dry. You know, they think it's like, if you're doing this, that's what you're doing. You know, like, put up with all the bullshit. It's just like, but I don't have to. I can get rid of the harassing people.
I can curate my space, and that's okay. But also, Phil, that's exactly what I was saying. I have an issue with this to an extent, setting a line for what's an appropriate response to bullying. Because there are tons of kids in school who you will hear were being relentlessly bullied, and then they punched their bully in the face. The bully had never been physical with them, but they wouldn't stop harassing them, causing them distress, and they punched them in the face, and the kid that was being bullied got expelled.
Yep.
While I'm not condoning violence, I'm not condoning violence. I'm not saying that should be the right thing. I'm just saying that who am I to tell this child who has been suffering that they shouldn't stick up for themselves in some way? I'm not saying physical violence should be the answer. Obviously, I think that there are so many things that could have been done prior, but should that child be...
But they weren't done prior, and that's why it led to that. Like, as someone who was relentlessly bullied in school... going to the right things, they all just tell you to take the high road. And I think when it is a point of being, it's easier for a comedian to take the high road or a celebrity or someone because they have a high road already, you know, like they're already in a position where they are above it in some way, you know, whether it's like, you know, like, should they have to deal with it? No, of course not. Like they shouldn't have to. In a perfect world, no one would harass anybody else. It would be great. But you know, we're not there, and they already have the road to take it. But when you're with someone where you're on an equal leveling and you're being harassed every single day, and you try and take the proper path to like not do that, and they just tell you to take the high road, I could see why kids punch their bullies. Like I 1,000% had thought about that all the time.
I do want to. I just want to quickly say that I don't at all condone that. I super do think there should still be consequences for doing something physical, so like a suspension. But the school should then get involved, handle the fact that there is bullying, because we never want things to escalate. I want to make it very clear, because now that we're touching on this subject, obviously being in the U.S., way worse things have happened from kids claiming that they were being bullied. And I'm not taking away that, but I will never, ever, ever go out of my way to empathize with someone who causes real harm to other people. I specifically, if you are not catching on, I'm mentioning school shootings. That has been mentioned, and I think too many people try so hard to empathize with the shooter, and I will not empathize with them. And so therefore, yes, there is a limit to what is an appropriate response to bullying. I'm using quotes because we don't know the reasonings, but I do think it's still important to acknowledge that there still are weird gray areas where there's a response to bullying that you may not think is the appropriate response. But I would still argue then, where are the adults getting involved? Where are the people that could have at any point mitigated these situations where the kid didn't feel the need to punch their bully, the kid didn't feel the need to cause like a riot at school? No. I know you're talking about responding to a heckler. We tend to just typically, you know, it becomes its own thing, right? But because I think there's a lot around heckling
is bullying. Like, if you're like, not all heckling is bullying. If a heckler just goes like, "I love you," that's heckling. You're interrupting the show. You're not really bullying them. Like, you're just heckling. There are a lot of like the very severe hecklers, because the person that says "I love you," the person just goes, "Okay, shut up." Like, you know, like that's it. But like actual hecklers, especially at smaller comedy shows, are bullies. They're saying the guy's not funny. They're saying that his set is boring. I've seen dozens, if not hundreds, of videos of the guys in the middle of the set, and they go, "Oh, boring." And he's like, "Dude, I'm doing a show up here. Like, if it's boring to you, just like shut up or leave." Yeah. Like, I think it's... And he's like, "Well," and then the heckler goes, "Well, I can't. I'm here with like my family or whatever." And it's like, well, then you're ruining their time. So shut up. Like, you know,
I would die if someone I was with fucking did that.
100%. Those hecklers are bullies. Like, they are bullying. Just like that person that commented on that thing that said like guys can't trim their eyebrows. That's bullying, you know. And I think like it's verbal bullying, you know, like there's still that line, and it's not like relentless, it's not repeated, but it's still an act of bullying. If I go to the bank and some big dude cuts me in line, well, no one does that anymore, but let's say I did perchance happen to go inside the fine establishment of a bank, and I was going to do something physically inside for some reason, and this person just stepped in front of me in line, and I didn't say anything because he's a big dude, and he was like, "Oh, well, I gotta get my money out," and I was just like, okay. That guy just bullied me because he just used his physical stature to scare me into backing off. That's bullying, you know? Like, that guy probably is never going to do that again. I'll probably never see that guy again. That was still bullying, you know?
Yes. But I do agree with PK that there's still a way that I think a performer should handle those situations.
Correct.
Because there are still
Right.
there are more variables in those situations than like a bullying situation, right? So
Right.
a stereotypical, like playground school bully situation. When we're
Right.
talking about a heckler at a comedy show, I think part of the issue is you see all these clips of hecklers at comedy shows that it almost, to an extent, makes people want to heckle to be in a fucking clip from the comedy
Right.
show. And I'm not saying that's the
Right.
right thing, but I think to an extent it encourages that behavior. And
Right.
it is in the best interest of the comedian and the audience as a whole to just remove the person if the first
Right.
joke back at them didn't shut them up. Because I
Right.
do
And I think
agree there's a
that's-
back and forth that's funny, and so like the first one or two responses, fine, sometimes that's funny and adds to the show, but after that they're taking away from the show. Get them out.
Right. Like I think like what you said, I think it encourages people. I think that's why a lot of times comedians don't actually answer hecklers until it becomes relentless, because there are
Yes.
people that try and heckle and they'll say like, oh, blah, 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 like just randomly, and it just kind of gets drowned out and the person just keeps going, and like
Yes.
they ignore and the audience ignores it. There are just sometimes where they just keep going and it's like, okay, dude, like you've been doing this for 20
You want
minutes.
attention,
like,
here it is.
shut the fuck up. Right. Like shut up. Like,
I also think though, to an extent,
whatever.
especially when you're not used to hecklers yet, and even at some point when you are, it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
throw you off. You're in a zone, so I understand
No,
having
of course.
an initial knee-jerk reaction of what the fuck. I do
Right.
agree that they shouldn't take it to an insane level of being rude, but
Right.
I do understand an initial response being kind of a little more aggressive than maybe it should be, but that's because they're thrown off. They didn't expect to be interrupted during their set. They have it planned out.
and
They know what they're doing.
I agree that the initial response is like here's the thing. I agree with what Phil said. There is no correct response.
Yes.
Every place has their own guidelines to follow when it comes to that stuff. Just like if you're in a retail store and someone's being annoying, there are guidelines that you follow to then remove that person.
Mhm.
Whether you believe that's correct or not, that store has just deemed that that's what the policy that they're going to follow is. That doesn't make it correct. That's why every store has their own different policy of it. There's a lot of overlapping. Like we've sort of come to an equilibrium of what we all think is okay. But every situation is going to be different. And that's exactly where things just aren't cut and dry, and that's why you have to take everything with, the situation that it comes in. I think that initial response, in my opinion, is fine. Like, that's the point. If you have the two sentences and the person responds back and then that's it, like, that's fine, like, that is warranted. Like, you're going to make fun of or whatever. It's like the relentless, like, keep going and going and
Yes.
going. And I think, like, if someone made a comment and the person responded with like the streamer responded with a racial slur towards him,
Right.
that's not okay.
Yes.
You just became a bully. You just bullied.
And also
someone,
outed yourself as a racist, so.
Right. I think
job
pointing out
canceling
like if
yourself.
you're if a bully comes up
That's
to you and
fair,
goes like
PK. Sorry.
if what?
The last thing, though, that
There's-
PK said, I think
Oh,
that's
correct.
honestly what we're
Right.
getting at. I think we
Yeah.
all are agreeing that there isn't the correct response, but there are responses we as people
They're
would deem
just
as,
wrong.
that's not okay. Don't
Right.
do that.
Right. I think there's a different, like, I think the reason that the tweet that we were talking about is okay, in my opinion, is because he's talking specifically about the thing
They made
that
fun
he
of.
said.
Yes.
Right. So, like, if a guy comes up to you and says you're fat, and he's fat, you go, well, you're also fat. Like, you're, and like, oh, that's so fucked up. It's like, well, like, like you just be dumbfounded. You'd be like, what, whatever. So, it's just like, yeah, like that's just like that's gonna. Yeah, but if a guy comes to you and goes, "You're fat," and you go, "Yeah, well, your whole family's dead and you suck and you're ugly," like it'd be like, okay, well now that's just like, holy shit, like where did that come from?
Might have been a little
like
far.
you just bullied this guy and who just like and
Yes.
yeah, you could decide if you want to feel bad for the guy that also was bullied, but like that doesn't change the fact that you were still too also a bully. Like I think that's the biggest thing is just not becoming a bully in your
Right.
response. Because I've seen celebrities, and I agree with you that some celebrities go over the top. Some celebrities go over the top and are ridiculously mean to these people. and again, there are some paparazzi and other random fans who come up and they say some really, really mean, fucked up things. Like that happens, and that is a thing. And I think sometimes celebrities let the acclamation of all of those build up into that one response that they then let out.
That's true.
Which sometimes is not fair to the person that they're going with. Because there are, I've seen paparazzi who, again, I'm not a big fan of paparazzi in general. I think it's not a great industry, and I think it's very rude to blindside people when they're just trying to go and have a good time.
Live their life.
There are, however, I will say, there are places that paparazzi hang out in LA that specifically celebrities go to then
be photographed. Yes.
Found. Yeah.
And that's like that's the agreed upon thing then. That's like, okay, cool. You'll get the photos. You don't have to come into my life.
Yeah. You can actually learn if you take the TMZ tour when you go to, because I did that when I was in Los Angeles. If you take the TMZ tour, they actually go around, they tell you that these are places like this is a restaurant where if a celebrity has a new movie coming out or they haven't done things in like a year, they want to like be back in the news, they come here, and that way people can go and find them and so there are those things there. However, still they go places then they don't want to actually be found and they get blindsided. I think that's fucked up. But I've seen people just go, I've seen people go and they just go like, hey, you have like this thing that happened, like, and like all the serious things, that's all fucked up. Like you just broke up with whatever, like, but if they're like, oh, hey, like we heard that like your movie got, shooting got pushed back for like a few months because of whatever. And I've seen people like just go into that person, and just like scream and yell and be like, you're a like fat weasel who can't make it in his own whatever, like they just say like really mean things.
Vita has been trying to come up with all these insults every time. He's like, what's a fucked up thing I'm saying to this fictitious person?
But I can't, like that response like isn't warranted. Like this person asked you about a thing, should they have been there? Like no. But does that mean you need to like verbally bully them? Like no. And I think that's like
I want to touch on, I know PK's leaving, but I do want to touch on it's a symbiotic relationship, because I'm going to respectfully disagree. I think at one point, paparazzi provided more than it does now. Because at the end of the day, with social media, you don't really need paparazzi in the way that it was needed back then. It was needed before because that was the only way for you to really get seen in the papers for just random reasons. Just randomly still be a topic of conversation. You don't really need them anymore. They're outdated in my opinion. They're not they don't have the necessity anymore. Plus, I would argue if we were only looking at them in the symbiotic relationship, they'd only go to the restaurants that were approved. They wouldn't fucking be tracking these people down when they're on vacation. They wouldn't cross those boundaries.
A symbiotic relationship would still even be they would go to the places where paparazzi were like originally going, which was like these big premieres and these big like these places where you expected to be.
Well, I meant even if they agreed upon it. I just meant anything that's an agreed upon.
I think the agreed upon places though are more out of desperation for not wanting to be followed other places.
That's a really good point.
Like that was a response. That's like if I followed you around every single day and you were like, okay, hey Beta, you can't follow me at work. Okay, so when I come here, you can't follow me. However, if I go to FedEx while I'm at work, you can follow me then. Then I'd be like, oh, okay, that's you just not wanting me to follow you everywhere else. So you set up a specific place because of annoyance, And I think that's where the restaurant parts came in, because there are press passes and things like that for events. And if you get one of those, that is a celebrity saying, here, I'm giving you the rights to go take pictures of me while I'm at this place. And I want to be photographed here and I want to be interviewed and I'm going to this thing because I want that to happen. Whereas these restaurants and stuff like that, they're now just a secret agreed upon thing where it's like, okay, avoid that restaurant if you don't want to be seen, like, yeah, it's just like
you've been restricted yet again. And it's because you had to give up some freedoms in order to what's the word I'm looking for? To satisfy this kind of
Yeah,
like
these
monster. Like, I don't know. I definitely have a very negative view of paparazzi.
I do not like paparazzi. I very much do not, because here's the thing. Even the clips where they're like, this was such a good clip, like we saw blah 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 outside of whatever, and the person like we watched a bunch of like MGK with Mod Sun and like stuff like that where he just like
going to a restaurant.
Yeah, and I was just like, I don't like that wasn't interesting to me.
No,
like anything he could have said, he would have announced on social media now, which is something he do, or in the old times he would have just called up a press person and been like, I want to say this thing.
It's a weird thing where they're like, oh, you get to see the celebrities in the wild. Like, I don't personally, like, I don't give a fuck. There are some people who are very invested in celebrity culture. I get that. I'm not one of those people. I am not the demographic for that. I fucking hated seeing the paparazzi videos of them showing up at Kanye West, and I'm not even a fan of Kanye, showing up at his house at like 2 a.m. At 2 a.m. to fucking annoy him, and he's like, you can't do this. He's like begging them to leave.
Right.
And then he flips out on them. They're like, caught him on camera flipping out. Bitch, you're lucky that's all he did. What the fuck? Fuck off. Like, he's trying to just live his life. Like, obviously he's not going to be happy that you're here at an ungodly hour. I don't think he'd be happy that you're out of his house ever, but especially at an inappropriate time.
Right.
I guess there's no appropriate time.
I think we're right. I think we'll slowly get to the point where as those things get less and less popular, like they'll stop doing it. But I think it's sort of I forget what I watched, but it was a thing about paparazzi and how the people really created that because they were interested in those topics, and because they watched it, these people go out and do these things, you know? And that's the symbiotic relationship that was created, because paparazzi are like, you guys aren't going to go bother these people where they're at these places, so we'll do it, and you guys consume it and you pay us for it, and we monetize it and you still watch it, and like all of these things, and that is like, they'll keep doing it. I think that's it, because I think I watched them and they said, if all these people actually believe that that their privacy shouldn't be broken and all this stuff, then this industry wouldn't exist, because they wouldn't be making any money. The fact that they still keep making money and they still keep getting viewers from it, that's why they keep doing it. And I think that there's a majority of people that enjoy that content, obviously, and that's why they still do it. That's why you've seen that like move over to YouTube too, with like the Hollywood Fix or whatever, where they're following YouTubers around and trying to like, and you know, blindside YouTubers by doing those like mock interviews or whatever. You know, it's just like, I think there are people who enjoy that, and I very much don't, and that's why I think it's like super messed up. But I also see it not going away until everyone agrees that like that
we'll stop consuming that content. Yeah,
right. Because like I think TMZ or someone from TMZ did an interview that talked about you guys announce deaths all the time. That TMZ's very proud that they announce deaths first. Like when a celebrity dies, if it's like a new death, they're very proud of the fact that they announce it first. Right. That also means they have the most
all
wrong.
The fucking info wrong. Yeah.
Right.
Nothing's right if you announce it first.
Right. They also have announced usually that some people die when they haven't died, you know, and they're very good about printer retractions and things like that. But still,
but not as many people see the retraction as see the initial announcement.
Never. Right. Never. And I think they had talked about like, why do you do that? Like, why don't you just wait and then announce it? And they say, well, because people click on it and watch, and everyone's so curious, and so that's why we do that. Like, if you're the first, you get way more views and clicks and whatever, and so that's why we do first, because people actually watch. So, you know, yeah, I think that's fucked up, and I think that's like where it goes, you know. And I think because of social media and everything, like we all get so invested in some of this stuff that we just click on whatever, you know.
Yes.
Not we specifically, I think just a lot of people.
No, but in general, absolutely
do that, you know.
And when you the thing is, even when you let your curiosity get the best of you and you're like, well, everyone's been talking about this like freak out that this celebrity has, so I'm gonna go click on it. We are still engaging with the content. We are still a part of the problem. Even if we're just like, I'm curious. It's not, I'm not someone who is, and I'm making fun of myself even with this, because I'm definitely guilty of maybe looking at stuff that was a huge headline on like TMZ or some shit, and I was wondering what was going on with this person, and I look into it, and I've now given more clicks to that information, and therefore more people are going to keep doing that and keep harassing celebrities to get more clips like that, to get more information that will get more clicks.
Right. I think it's a lot about we've just fallen so far from real, like, news. And I think my dad had a really good... We were all sitting in the living room, we were watching the news, and they said, these big brands are making your container size smaller, so you're paying the same price but getting less in them. Like ketchup, for instance. Like, they make they hollow out the bottom, so you get less ketchup or whatever. Which has been happening for years, by the way. Like, it happens all the time.
I definitely knew of that.
And my dad goes, this is what happens when you have a president who isn't controversial. This is what they have to report on now. Because they were all so used to just every single day having a controversy to report on about the president of the United States that...
That's a good point.
They can't find it, so they need to find these just clickbaity headlines that are going to make you watch, and, you know, instead of just real news, you know? Like, they just can't do real news anymore. Like, that's like...
That's so interesting, because I was actually thinking of discussing another topic, which is now leads into, of course, you've been so good with these transitions accidentally. But I was thinking specifically on how much people complain about clickbait titles, but then still will engage with clickbait content. And we all do it. We all will click on something like, that sounds really fucking interesting or cool, and then it ends up not being that way. And I've been struggling with that a lot in terms of making my YouTube content and wanting to make it so people will click on it, but I don't want to give you a clickbait title. And it's finding the fine line where it's a little clickbaity but still happens, and it's phrasing.
I think that's what I try and do. When I make YouTube videos, or other people ask for help with naming videos or whatever, I try and think of something that is true. That's not really stretching the truth. It's just a true, cool thing that happens in the thing, you know? Like, if I named our Golf with Friends thing, if I named it, like, really big balls, that is true. In the thing, there were really big golf balls, you know? And, like...
You also made a comment really about this.
In Golf with Friends. Like, like, that is something that happens in the video. Obviously, these videos are long. I can't encompass an entire 45-minute video into a title, you know? You just can't do that. But when it comes to naming things, I think clickbait is actually not misused, but I think the meaning has changed, because clickbait used to just be fake. It used to just be like not real. It used to just be this big headline.
And that's still what
and it's not.
When I think negatively of clickbait, that's what I think of. I think when people title something like "We broke up," and then it's like, haha, jokes, guys. Like, we're still together. We were just joking. Like, we just didn't see each other today because they. No. It's like not even that. It, like, won't even talk about it. They're like, oh no, he was actually just gone for the day, so he's not in the video, but we're still together. It's like, no, that's just misleading your audience for no reason and getting a knee-jerk emotional response. And I think you can do clickbait without getting an emotional response that's manipulative.
Right. Or just like people are just like, we're gonna create an OnlyFans, and then it's just like in the video, they're just like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if, like, you know, there was an OnlyFans, and like that's only, it's like the 30-minute video, and then talk about it for like 2 minutes. You know, that'd be like if we named this podcast like "We Make Fun of the President of the United States." Like, we didn't do that. We said 2 sentences about that, and that was it. You know, like, you know. Or like, we think all paparazzi should die. Like, we didn't say that either. That would still sort of like follow along with it, but like, still, we didn't talk about that specifically.
I also don't want. I would never say I want anyone to die. That's too extreme.
No, I would not say that.
Yeah, and I definitely wouldn't put that in a title either, because I don't like extreme titles that you know are immediately upsetting someone. Immediately.
Right.
Why would you want that? Like, because I like the clickbaity title of Big Balls and Golf with Friends. I'm okay with the clickbaitiness that's kind of funny. I like that. I don't like the idea of ever making someone immediately angry or upset for no reason.
Right.
That seems unnecessary.
I think, let's see, I'm trying to see.
Exactly. It's the misleading your audience and making them expect something that's not at all going to happen. Because the thing is, there's so many legit videos out there that are like, oh, we broke up. Oh, we're having issues. All these weird things. So then when you title something clickbaity that still falls in line with that, people are going to immediately feel for you. They're going to immediately think something's wrong. And then when nothing is, that's incredibly aggravating as an audience member.
Right.
Hello, Tweakopedia.
Yeah, I think that I think picking just controversial words as your title, like that's clickbait, and I think we've now changed it into, because David Dobrik had a very big thing about that. Like at the beginning when he first started and only had like 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, he always talked about we need clickbait, like the clickbait thumbnails or whatever, and he would do things that are just like stupid, like, oh, I slapped him, but it was really just him holding his hand to his face, you know, like that's clickbait. Like he didn't actually slap him, he just held his hand to his face, you know, and that was his thumbnails and stuff at the beginning. Now he does things and they still say, oh, we need clickbait, but he's like giving away a new car, and it's like, that's not clickbait, you're actually doing that.
Yes.
You're giving away a car, like that's just an interesting title, you know, and they talk about it on their podcast that, like, that's just where it's now come. Like they are actually just making interesting titles, and it's not
interesting
really
titles
anymore.
are still called clickbait, but they just live in a different realm of it.
Right, because I think like there's the negative connotation of it, and I think like, in my opinion, clickbait should actually be a positive term in it. Like it should be, like, you should make, like, that should just be what it means to have an interesting title that makes people click on it. Because if you think about it, that's all you want. It's just bait for someone to click on your video, and you want your video to then match the like content, which has been such a negative connotation that like it's just not. Now it is just like a negative word, you know. It's like
I love that in every podcast we have had so far, we get onto the topic of words' meanings and having negative connotations inherently, and it just made me smirk so much, because I'm like, oh, we really, like, we have a home base, you know. We have a happy place where it's like, this is where the podcast goes.
I think, well, to take it back a little bit to Bo Burnham's Inside, I think a lot of and more of just like his philosophy on things, it's a lot about like looking below like surface level for things, because I think that we talk a lot about things that we don't think should be there, and we're surrounded by a lot of like-minded people that I actually don't think we're friends with a lot of people who are at this base, like, average level of like, I don't want to say society, but like this base average level of just like thoughts on the world, you know? Like, for instance, we talked about like,
are you saying
people who
we're
look at
not
their
friends
phones.
with people who typically disagree on these basic things? Sorry, I'm just trying to
Not just disagree, because you can look below the surface and disagree, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I think because that still takes thought and opinion, things like that. I think there's a lot of people who are just in the center, don't really have an opinion, and don't really think about that, you know? Because we talked about people who don't look up from their phones because they don't want to
take in the world.
And those people are the people that probably aren't looking beneath the surface for all of those things. Like, there are people that look at their phone, they just go, yeah, like, I'm just looking at my phone. They don't think about why are they looking at their phone, you know? Like, they don't think about that stuff. And we are very like-minded the way that we all sort of think in that way. We think about like the context behind things. We think about the connotation. And I think that's why we get hung up in words' meanings and stuff like that, because there are people who just hear a word, hear its meaning one time, and then just say it, whereas
also have a knee-jerk response to it. And don't try to, I think... This makes us sound like we're super fucking tooting our own horn, so please, like, in chat, feel free to knock us down 20... No, but, like, please, fucking knock us down a few pegs. We need to be humbled. But I think part of it is that people... I have definitely had so many moments in my life where I had knee-jerk reactions to something, and I've learned over time to take a second and think, why, though? Why am I feeling that way? And that doesn't mean I'm never having knee-jerk responses to stuff. Absolutely, I'm going to. But it's taking that moment to think through what in that word, just in and of itself, is making me feel that way. And I don't... And we are taking out words that are, of course, inherently, you know, attacking, discriminatory. We are not discussing those words. We mean... Even
in a sense, though, I don't know. I just from personal experience, words that are offensive, I still have thought about why... are they offensive? Like, I definitely think about, like, why would that be offensive? Even when it comes to, like, when people used to use the word gay as derogatory, why especially when I was younger, I was like, why is this offensive? Like, you know, like, especially if it's
That's
in
a
a
fair
way that
point.
I am joking with people and I'm not saying it in a derogatory way, but learning that it is derogatory because other people hearing it used in that way, it develops a derogatory meaning and it develops a bad like press behind this thing, and
Well,
it's
I think it also
immediately associated with like
the way in which it was used, though, in joking terms, was derogatory. Like, I even used that when I was younger, and that doesn't mean I mean, I also am bi, but, you know, you can argue that it was internalized homophobia. You can argue all those things. That term was much more common when I was growing up to be used 100%. As an insult for something that's dumb. And no, I don't at all think that was the equivalent of any gay people. I think the problem is it lost its meaning in terms of its connection to people that are gay, but it was still their word and being used in a derogatory manner. And I think it is important, though, you are right that I don't think because a word is inherently offensive or derogatory or discriminatory that we can't unpack it. I do think there's importance in that, but I don't think that the outcome has to be what some more extreme people will think of, don't give words power. I don't necessarily fall in line with that because there is power in words. Words that have held up a system for an extended period of time fucking have power. That's not going to disappear just because you want it to. So I don't want us to come at this from a place, and I'm not saying we are, but just like for clarification, we're not coming at this of a place of like, you know, bright-eyed, hoping the world is perfect if we unpack these words. I think it's important in terms of, one, language. It's important to just understand where words come from, and that's actually something we're going to talk about in an upcoming episode. But in addition, I think it's important because it helps us, if we are not the target group that is being discriminated against with that word, I think it's important to unpack why that word is harmful to others and help us understand its severity. And sometimes even if like bitch is a swear word, you know, like, and if I call you a bitch, it's mean and like I'm doing it as like an insult to you or whatever, or people, you know, say like, oh, like, you know, what's up, bitch, like, you know, whatever, people do that, but the word bitch doesn't inherently really target any specific group and really isn't offensive to an entire, like, group, you know? Like, if I say you're a bitch, like, we know that that's just a mean word and it's offensive and it just, like, it has a meaning of being negative, but we're not targeting any group. It'd be different, you know, it'd be like, if I call you, if I call you a hoe, the reason that's negative is because, you know, if you were, that's not really a bad thing. And if you were like a sex worker, also not really a bad thing. I am now like adding a negative connotation to something that could just be a normal thing. That is a normal like profession and a normal thing, and it shouldn't be like made fun of. Like the word slut, like that has a negative connotation, but it's not. Fucking live your life the way you fucking want to live your life. Like that's why I think like people
like
use the words to put people down. The words are used to hurt someone, as opposed to if someone is just sleeping around and they're living their best life, you're going to talk about that differently than just being like, what a fucking slut. Like that's different. That's different. And I mean, I'll make jokes and say like I'm pro slut because I do think that word is just so fucking ridiculous to me. But I've also been called stuff like that, so I think sometimes you have a little bit of trying to reclaim a word, whether that's beneficial or not. To each their own, absolutely.
You said that there are people who say that don't give words power, whatever. Like when people make a mistake, they go, "Well, don't give this word power." And you said we live in a place where words have power. We super live in a place where words and designations have power. You call someone doctor, whatever. That word has power. They are in this position of power. Like that's what that word is. We say Mr. President, you know, like their words do have power. So to say that
it's showing respect in those words.
Right, saying that even like in the military where they just say sir, you know, like, or like having the of capital, like whatever, like you can't say that, well, those words are different. It's just, no, all words have power, and it's about, you know, using them in the correct context or not using them at all, because some words just don't need to be used, you know, like you know, I think it's just like when well, I guess I already said it. I already said oh or whatever.
No, it's okay.
You know, it's just like it's you know, the world is run on words of power. There are words that have power and designations, and calling someone a word like could be negative. And I think it actually goes back to what we talked about 2 podcasts ago, which was, who does it fall on to not be bullied? Does it fall on the person to just ignore the bully, or does it fall on society to then just get rid of bullies? And, you know, saying that it was like both, like, you know, but more times it falls on the bully. Like, you got to get rid of the bully.
Right, we're gonna hold them accountable.
Right, and it's the same thing. Like, just don't use these words. Like, it's just
right.
Like,
if these words are causing, like, I think part of the issue I feel when people say things like, stop giving these words power, like, I'm just going to use these words. And, like, iDubbbz is a good example of, he uses a lot of words that I super would not use and I don't think are appropriate 100%. To use.
Right.
And I have a bit of a frustration with people who are like, you gave the word the power, because, one, you didn't. That's typically most of the words that people get offended by have a long history behind them that caused that offense. It's not just used in one instance and you're like, now it's a bad thing. Typically there's a lot to unpack behind that
like
word.
If I call you a Heckledorf, like that's not offensive.
Makes me laugh,
however,
apparently.
if I just started calling people who were ugly Heckledorfs, then you would be like, wait a second.
It might build
Are
a
you
thing.
calling me ugly? Is a Heckledorf an ugly person? I don't know what I'm gonna look it up, make sure it's not offensive.
But
sorry, continue.
No, it's fine. I have a real frustration, though, with people who almost have this arrogance on no words should bother you. And I'm going to be really transparent and upfront. I used to super be that kind of person. I've talked about this before. I definitely held some ideas for a bit of time that I now would deem totally incorrect, inappropriate, and not a reflection of who I am now. And I super used to think people gave words power and that was not okay and that was ridiculous.
Can I interrupt you real quick and say that the reason, because I used to think that too, and the reason I think we thought that's because we were both bullied a lot, and that I think was our way to cope and get over it, you know? Like, I think that was our way, that like if we say that these words only have power if we give them power, it's a way that we can internally cope and try and help other people cope too.
I think it was almost used, though, like a weapon against us. Like, I definitely think, because of my mental health history and things I've been through, that I feel even more so that some ideology was used to prey on me in terms of convincing me that I have way more control over my life than I necessarily do. You have control, and I'm not trying to act like the world is out of control for you and you're fucked.
No,
I'm saying, though, I think a lot of the time, we're already hard on ourselves when we deal with our mental health issues. We already are looking at ourselves like, it's my fault I'm dealing with these things. That when you have outside sources that are agreeing with you and saying, it is your fault, fucking suck it up and deal, you're like, shit, I need to do that.
I guess I have to do that. Right.
Yeah. And I think that those are the same people who also would convince me that words don't have meaning unless we give it meaning. And I agree with you, Just Ask Miles, because yes, words don't have meaning unless we give it meaning. And society fucking gave them meanings by the history in those words, by the usage in history of those words. And it's okay that they have meaning. And it's okay that we say we're not okay with those words being used. And we find them to be words that are attacking. But the way I look at it, and I think the confusion I have, is I don't get why people are so strongly on the side of stop giving words power, start using all the words. Why do I want to hurt people? Why would I want to just hurt people just for the fucking sake of, I don't even think proving a point, but thinking I'm proving a point? What is the point of that? I couldn't imagine wanting to go through life and just make people hurt and uncomfortable just cause. What the fuck is the point of that? I genuinely have such a hard time grasping this, because it's the same thing with when you hear all about the people who say that you should fat shame people in order to get them to lose weight. And they think they're like holier than thou, and they have found like a life hack, and that bullying people is what makes them become better versions of themselves. And I'm just going to respectfully or not respectfully say, no, that doesn't. And even if that worked for you, it's just such an odd mentality that I can't wrap my brain around, where it's just like, let me just be horrible because I think you should feel shame in who you are as a person. And the way you're going to sort out your life is if I tell you what a shitty person you are. And then you're going to be like, wow, my mental health cleared up overnight. Crazy how that works. Sorry, I know I went on a fucking tangent there.
No, but like that's true. Like I think that is like the I think if a word overwhelmingly is, because here's the thing, there are going to be people that just don't like certain words, you know, like they're like, if I call you a dick, you'd be like, I really don't like that word, you know, like it's just like, if you don't like that word, then like, yeah, whatever, you know, like we call each other a cunt all the time. People really don't like the word cunt, and we say it a lot. There's really no negative connotation behind that word. We just like, I think as I think so. I will agree, because we do use the word cunt a lot, and I understand that people can be offended by that word. I still think there's a huge difference in terms of like cultural background of that word versus certain other words. No, true.
And also, I think because it doesn't have that societal and cultural baggage behind it, I do not feel that's an inappropriate word to use in certain contexts. That doesn't mean no one can disagree with me. Obviously, like I can sound hypocritical to certain people for that.
I think like the reason, like I think it goes back to just like calling you a cunt or a dick, or like you calling me a cunt or dick or whatever, like that is those words don't necessarily target a specific like group, like the word slut or a lot of other words, and I think that's why. So you could not like that word, and it could have like, it obviously has negative meaning. Like, that's the point. Like when we do call each other that, we're not doing it in like a super aggressive, you know, derogatory way. We're just doing it as like a joke, like, oh, like fuck you, you cunt, you know, like that kind of like friendly way. But like, yeah, you're right. Like other societies do have different connotation behind those words. So if you don't want to be called that word, like I'm not going to call you that word, you know, like I think that's like what it comes down to, because if you don't like that word and I keep calling you that, I'm bullying you, you know, like that is like, that's the point. So if there are people who say, well, you give that word power, it's like they just don't like that word. Like that's like, hey, do you like being tripped and falling on your face? No. Well, if I trip and I make you fall on your face, like
being an asshole.
You gave it power because you don't like it. If you liked it, it would be fine if I did this, right? Like that's just not how that works, you know? Like it's just like, hey, do you like a pie in your face? So if every day I showed up to your work and I threw a pie in your face,
Vita,
like
I'm allergic to
you're
those
giving
pies.
that power.
Could you stop doing that? I can't have
You're giving that
pie.
power. Like I think that is like, I think it's about finding things that are on like the same like wavelength. And I think people take verbal, just like people take mental health, people take verbal and mental things as not meaning as much as physical things, because there's no physical, like,
you can't point to it and look
aftermath.
at it.
Right, there's no physical aftermath. Like if I threw a pie in your face, there's no physical aftermath. If you trip and fell, you have a bruise, you know, like there's physical aftermath, and so people take that as wrong. I think it goes back to even the point you made about bullying, where if the bully punches the kid in the face, he gets expelled for punching a kid in the face. He got verbally punched in the brain for weeks and weeks and months, you know, like like they should take that just as serious.
I want to catch up a little bit with chat.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm first gonna tackle what just Miles said, because it is more relevant to what we just got to. But while I completely understand what you're saying, I would argue that there are definitely quirky bullying words people have come up with to make fun of someone, and they use it over and over again, that it does become derogatory towards that person. So while fridge inherently is not derogatory, while I'll agree with you on that, and I'll agree that it doesn't have the societal history that the N-word has, if you continuously called someone fridge, and you did it because of their stature, you did it because of their size, and you did it over and over again, yes, it is going to end up hurting that person, and it is going to end up being a derogatory word. So it is the intent behind it, and I would say repeated intent, I suppose. But I want to go back then quickly to Phil and PK we were talking about fat shaming, because specifically, I used to watch a YouTuber called Tara Babcock. And this was definitely my phase where I felt like I needed to be shamed almost into not letting my mental health be a thing. Like, almost ignoring it. It almost made me more blind to my mental health.
It worked really well, you know?
I'm cured. But it's this really fucked up place where and I'm not saying this is you, PK, but I'm curious your thoughts on this. Do you think there is a part in our brains where when there's something we view as a flaw of ourselves that we want to correct, that we are almost shamed into taking so much blame on that we should accept being bullied into fixing it, that we should accept that because we see it as a flaw? And I think there are certain people I've watched and spoken to whatever that do perpetuate these dangerous ideas that fat shaming is the way to go about it, because if you are made to know that it's bad, then you will get better. I just think that's so fucking stupid, in my opinion. And I just don't at all understand the notion of bullying being the best route. And while something might work for you, I would still urge and maybe argue that it's the best method for you. Just because it worked for you, I would still argue that a very supportive environment that says, hey, you're a little unhealthy and I really want to help you and I fucking care so damn much about you, and like I will make a diet plan with you, I will work out with you. I would argue that might actually be an even better motivator, and supporting you will help you feel like you have a place to fall. Because just like with anything where we're trying to better ourselves, like when I'm going to therapy and trying to better myself, I'm going to have days where I'm not doing great. And that doesn't mean it's canceled all of the hard work. Just as if you're working out like crazy and you don't work out for a day or two, that doesn't cancel all of your hard work.
Right, that you've done that,
And having that community of support that says to you, you're still fucking slaying it, might motivate you more than someone saying, yeah, you're a fucking piece of shit.
Right.
Just
I think it's the ends don't justify the means. Like, if you were fat shamed into losing weight and that worked for you, that doesn't necessarily justify the person that fat shamed you, you know? Like, I think it's I think that one, that doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody, and that doesn't mean that even if it worked for you, that it still doesn't mean that it was correct, you know? Like, you got the outcome that worked for you, and that's great, but that doesn't mean that you should go around fat shaming people.
That's like,
you know?
spanking. Like, spanking was used for so long, and I was even spanked growing up, and that's not like an approved method of parenting now, and I super will not spank my kids.
I spanked all the time,
because
my mom would hit us with a wooden spoon all the time, you know?
I was hit with
like, you saw the wooden spoon.
I was hit with a spatula, but that was by a nanny, and she got fired for doing that. But I do think that just because something was done and in theory may have worked doesn't mean it's right. Like, the same people that argue fat shaming is okay typically argue spanking is fine. And looking back at it, I don't think I was traumatized by being spanked, but I'm not going to argue that that was the best method. There are definitely other methods that would have worked to help make me not continue behavior they didn't like, that wouldn't have involved a physical interaction.
I don't know. I don't want to say I don't think I was traumatized by it, but I will say I do have a visceral reaction to physical, like not physical confrontation, but more like physical, like, I also don't really want to say punishment either, but like that, you know,
aggressive
like,
touch,
yeah, like I have a very super high pain tolerance, like
no. Words are no. PK,
we're
not PK. We're not putting words in your mouth. Sorry, no. We understand that it worked for you. We're just unpacking the whole thing. So
yeah,
it's
sorry,
like,
PK. No,
we understand where you're coming from. We're just talking about the concept as a whole. So no, we super understand that was not what you were saying. We completely understand where you were coming from and what worked for you. We are discussing the concept as a whole and how people can perceive these concepts. So go ahead.
But yeah, like, I don't think I'm traumatized by it, but like, I definitely just have a like reaction to it, and like, I know I'd be able to like take it and it wouldn't bother me because I have a high pain tolerance or anything like that, but just very much like that's just sort of ingrained in my head now, just because of like that, you know, like, it happened, you know, like, and it was just associated with being negative, you know. And so I think but like you said, like I'm not gonna like spank my kids, and I think there are ways to do things that are just better and more
I think we
positive, because I
found
think
more
that was
efficient
the-
ways to
the-
do things.
Right. And I think that's like where just like what you said, where it's just like you can say, hey, like we can go to the gym and like we'll like make a diet plan and stuff like you can still like, you know, get to that same point in just a different, better, more efficient way, you know, and a way that is probably more solid, you know, like it has a higher chance of working, you know, because still that might not work for everybody. There are some people that like that might have to hit rock bottom to then bounce back, you know?
Right. And I think that can
because-
also be dangerous too, that concept, which is interesting because
No,
I super
100%.
was, I've definitely been in that mindset where I thought I have to hit rock bottom to like turn my life around. And I think that's sometimes scary and dangerous because no,
Right.
at any point on your decline down this hill, you can fucking turn around
Right.
and go back up.
Right.
And
I have
it's an interesting thing because it's a super almost societal like accepted thing. Yes, I had to hit rock bottom to figure that out.
I don't think it's I don't think I've ever thought that I had to do that to get somewhere. Like I will say I don't think I personally ever thought that. I think I've definitely like hit rock bottom a few different times, and that has just kind of been where I landed. And along the way you try and do things, but sometimes like it just like it doesn't always work that way. But I think as someone who is someone's friend or whatever, like there are just some people do just have to hit rock bottom to bounce back, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
That's
more
my point. I get that sometimes
Yeah.
what makes people make changes is the hitting of the rock bottom. I'm just saying that I think sometimes in our heads we're like, I'm not at rock bottom yet, so like I can still be the self-destructive self. I'm not quite at the point of hitting rock bottom and having the realization. Granted, that's not to say that you always have rock bottom in your mindset. Like you may not know you're at rock bottom until you're at rock bottom.
Right, and that's usually the case.
Yeah,
but,
no,
for me
absolutely,
anyway.
no, fucking absolutely.
But yeah, I think that's the difference. I think it's dangerous if you see someone and you're just like, they're helpless. I'm not gonna help them until they hit rock bottom. I think that should never stop you from trying, you know. And I definitely have had friends in my life when it came to mental health who leave me alone because they think that that's what's gonna help, you know. And I think that is like so not healthy, because then like I'm still here and they think that means that that's okay, but that had nothing to do with it, you know.
That's
there were just
interesting.
other things that came along to do that. Like if you were in a really bad place and I was just like, well, whatever, she's gonna just hit the bottom, and like when she comes back, you know, I'll be justified.
Okay.
That doesn't justify me
You explained it better
stopping helping you. Yeah.
Okay. Because I more was thinking about it in an incredibly temporary sense, where it's like, oh, maybe you need space. Not in the sense you're fine until you're completely
I very much
like.
Yeah, I very much needed the opposite of space. I very much needed supportive people in my life, and they very much were like, well, you know, because here's the thing, and I think here's what we're I guess I should trigger warning a tiny bit because we're talking about mental health and things like that.
Do you want me to put a trigger warning up?
Oh, I don't think I'm not going to talk about anything like super.
Okay. If we're not talking about
dark.
specifics,
it's just about
vagueness
it's just
is
about
fine.
mental health. So yeah, if you just have like mental health issues, one of the things that makes me the saddest and weighs on me all the time is thinking about other people who, in a sense, have to deal with my mental health. And one of the things about that is sometimes you need support, and the support is not going to help at that moment, but it keeps you, and you're still going to be declining while you're receiving that support, but it sort of saves you from crashing and burning, you know, like, and I think that's what people don't realize. And for a lot of people in my life, needing support and still getting worse meant that they just gave up. And I think that as someone who has friends who have mental health issues, and as someone who can maybe shed light to other people who have friends who have mental health issues, if you have a friend and you are supporting them and helping them, and everyone's going to have their own way that you can do that. Like no one has the same exact way that you can be helpful and supportive, but you're helping them in the way that you and them have agreed is supportive, and they still are declining. still keep supporting them, because like they're heading towards the ground, but if you're just someone who's gonna like be able to support them and you're slowing them down to a nice feather fall instead of just like a fucking rock hitting the earth, you know, like that is still more helpful than you can imagine, because
really
if
like
they
that
are just
analogy.
hurtling towards the ground and they crash, they might never come back, you know. And that is where it, when you're on that incline again, it really makes you it really hinders your ability to come back, because you had all these people that were there and now they're not there, and you feel it makes coming back even harder, you know. And I think you should always be supportive even when people are on their decline, and you should be hopeful with them, because here's the thing, I will talk from my experience. I know that sometimes when Leah helps me, I'm sure I seem hopeless, you know. In my head, I don't have any hope at all that I'm gonna like come back and return, you know. And I know that if you just have other people who are hopeful around you, if you're being someone else's hope, that helps them, you know, like that very much is just a supportive way. And when they start coming back, they already have that hope nice and like reestablished. And like, I don't want to set my bounds by saying this, there are sometimes where you also sometimes just seem that way, and I always try and just make sure to be your hope, you know, like to make sure that you just remember that like it's okay to be hopeful, and that's not going to make them be hopeful right in that moment. Like I know that when I tell Leah that like things like there's still hope and we can still do things, and you can still be a functioning human being who's going to have really happy fun moments in life, you know, like life can still go on and happen, and you can live a relatively normal and happy life. And it's not just the stupid shit like it gets better. It's just like it's going to be a struggle.
I know
we
both feel the same about that fucking phrase.
Yeah, like it's not just about that. Because here's the thing, I will never tell Leah that like your life is going to be perfect. Like, you know, like that's never like, that's not the hope that I know she's looking for. It's you're going to have really fun, exciting moments that I know you're going to enjoy.
And those are all worth it. All those moments make it all worth it. And I think because I'm not going to say that that's helpful advice, one, because it's not helpful for everyone. But also, I do know people that are maybe earlier on in their mental health journey in terms of getting help and learning like how their brain works and how they interpret things, that I do think once you've been kind of down the road a little longer and dealing with therapists a little longer and medication and yourself and like really self-reflecting on who you've been and how you're changing and how your mental health has been a part of that, I think we are more at the place that we just want fucking realistic expectations. And I don't want someone to claim to me that it's gonna be fucking rainbows and butterflies. It's not. It's fucking not. And saying I don't like it gets better for the sole reason that it makes it sound like it will permanently be better. And it is such a false thing that I think I clung to when I was younger. I fucking clung to this idea in like middle school that high school would be better, that in high school college would be better, that in college my life after college would be better. And I kept clinging to these little things because people kept fucking telling me it gets better. And I finally got to a point where like, when I'm not permanently feeling better. I'm not permanently feeling like I am just ecstatic and happy all the time. And I think that phrase never worked for me. It just did not fucking work for me, and I needed to realign my thoughts and understand that I'm okay not being happy all the time. I just want to feel like I have things in this life that give it purpose, that mean a lot to me. And whether that's in the things I do, in the friends I make, in the family I have, like all of those things help give my life the purpose and create incredible memories that I never want to miss out on. And that has been a better thing for me to cling to than it gets better. I want to fucking throw up when I've seen all these I feel so, I'm so cynical. I feel really bad, but I just...
Well, I think the biggest thing in that sense is because they're and I don't know if we've talked about it specifically on the podcast, but I know we've talked about it just on while we've streamed before. But we've talked about the level of just of mental health acceptance, you know, and how like mental health is talked about and accepted when it comes to anxiety and depression, and that's it, and that's where it stops. They don't talk about anything else after
palatable mental health issues.
And when it comes to that stuff, the reason that anxiety and depression are actually so common now is because there are people who get better. Like, that is a thing. There are people who have depression. They're depressed for a time. They get on medicine. You know, their brain develops, something happens, they can go off the medicine, and for the rest of their life, they don't have to get on. That doesn't mean they never get sad anymore. Everyone gets sad, whatever. They just aren't in the place where they have to be medicated for their thing. And the same with anxiety. There are just sometimes where there's a portion in life where people get super anxious and they're on anxiety medication, and there's a point in their life where they get better. They don't become anxious anymore. They find
want to make sure that we clarify medication doesn't mean something's more severe. So like medication or
Correct.
needs to speak to a therapist or just
is
in a place where they feel their
coping,
depression or anxiety is hindering their life more. I just want to clarify that.
Yes. Right, and then they get to the place where that isn't a hindrance on their life. Again, that doesn't mean they never get anxious anymore. It just means that they now have the tools and they don't need to return to therapy or be medicated or anything like that. And I think because those are the two most common talked about things, all of these things when it comes to I have mental health, because here's the thing. I have depression and anxiety, but I have a cacophony of other things that underlie that, and I know that you do too, that you've talked about on here before. And I think that having people say that everyone's journey is the same and that it is going to get better, I think is where that falls short. Because for some people it is, that like you're not going to go into a hospital and tell the people who are like missing limbs it's going to get better, because here's the thing, like they might be able to get prosthetic, but some people might not be able to use it,
Also,
like,
wait, I think though
it's not just a blanket, like
I think it's the qualifying of the phrase that is what we really do, because it's like, yes,
right.
I would like to think that like your life is not going to constantly be down here. You're not constantly going to be so depressed that you don't want to be here anymore.
Right.
I do think it gets better works in the sense of, okay, you're not going to permanently stay down here. And I know that's the intent behind it. But I think we just have a maybe cynical view or just a hard time with that phrase, because you're going to have ups and downs. That's going to be life. And also your version of it gets better is going to change along your journey, that I just think that phrase sometimes sounds so dismissive. It sounds like it is a one size fits all, and it's not. And I think that's the frustration we typically have with it, is that yes, but what does better look like for you? Because it's going to look like something totally different for someone else with a different set of circumstances.
Right. And for a large portion of people that just have anxiety and depression, it is going to be cured, like it is going to be a thing where they don't need to receive special treatment for it, And I also think that that's why a lot of people use that, and why I think we think of that term, because people do use it in the term of it's going to be cured, basically. But no one says that, because no one actually thinks that those things are illnesses, So why would they say it's going to be cured?
Right.
So they say, it gets better. And I think, I know that that's why I get hung up on that phrase, because I that works the first few times, because you go, you're right, it got better last time, it's going to get better again. And when you keep going in there, you're like, everyone keeps saying it's going to get fucking better, but when's it going to get permanently better? Because that's what you think that you're looking for.
Yes.
And I think that's why it's so hard to hear that phrase in that way, because for some people there isn't a cure. Like, again, there is no cure for this stuff. There are some people who are gonna be cured and who might dip down a little bit, but they're gonna be fine.
I think cured though, like,
that is a thing.
I don't know if you'd be cured as much as like your symptoms will just become like negligible. Like they'll become so minute that they're not impacting your life in the same extent maybe they once were. But I do also think I think cured in the sense of like, I think there are very much people who had like depression when they were younger, and they never have those actual like symptoms again. In my sense, that's like a cure. They went through their entire life. They get sad, and but they're just not like anybody. They don't have that state of being. They don't have that actual and they don't have the actual again. Because like there are people who are just sad and they don't sit in bed for 30 hours, in a row, and they don't, like neglect their personal health, and they don't neglect their outer like organizational skills, and like they don't get hopelessness, like all of those things, like those are all symptoms of depression. And there are people who had those who never get them again. That's fair. like very
And,
circumstantial things in their life at that time that led to the depression that are no longer a part of their lives or no longer causing that influence.
And just like with anxiety, there's just sometimes where people in their life for a period of time they get super anxious, they get like really like jittery, they have panic attacks, they overthink, they are like hyper control, and then a couple years later things change in their life and they never have those feelings again. That doesn't mean they're not like, oh, I'm nervous to go on this flight, or I'm gonna meet my partner's parents for the first time, like I'm nervous. That doesn't mean that stuff doesn't happen,
right?
But they don't have like those
state,
symptoms. And then there are very much people who their entire lives they're going to have those things. They're going to have those periods where they fall back into, I need to lay in bed for 20 hours. I need to, I'm going to not shower for 3 or 4 days just because what's the point? Or have, like they're just people who have those symptoms for their entire life because they're usually followed by other things as well. But I think that's why that blanket statement is so, hurtful and harmful to us, because it almost feels like we've been lied to, we've been either lied to or we've been neglected, oh well, like
I didn't get that secret that gets me out of here.
Right, we don't want to talk about your thing, so we're not really talking about you,
go fuck yourself. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that would just it would be like if you're like at camp or something and you have like an autoimmune disease and they're just like, all right, be careful because like people have coughs and those will, like, if you have a cough, like it'll get better, and they're like, well, I have an autoimmune disease, so like it won't get better, and they're like, well, we're not talking about you, okay, so shut up, like, it would be like, what the fuck?
Okay, well, I'm here, I'm a part of the group you are speaking to.
Sorry, I'm just reading chat.
No, it's okay. We can catch up on chat. And I do agree with what you're saying, Phil, because that's exactly the issue they had with ADHD and autism and things like that, where people very blankantly were diagnosing things that had more to them. And while we don't always need labels, the thing is, when it comes to diagnoses, it's helpful because because there's a diagnosis, we know how to attack it. And I do think that that's helpful. Like, I was diagnosed with PTSD and dissociative disorder, which is technically a symptom of PTSD. I had a therapist, fun fact, that decided to tell me that that's not a thing. So that was fun. I should add that into that TikTok I did. But if I didn't know I had PTSD, I could think I have something else when I have flashbacks. When I all of a sudden just leave, like in the beginning of this podcast, I actually dissociated, and shit like that happens. I'm pretty good at being like, okay, you're fucking doing something, ground yourself. Those are things I've worked on and practiced. But if I didn't know that, I wouldn't then be able to research the tools, go get the help that would help me learn how to better deal with the symptoms of my diagnosis.
Right. Because the tricks that you pick up along the way, right, because I think having the well, you're talking about ADHD. Did you see, like, there's a TikTok that talked about renaming it to Dave, because they were like this word doesn't mean this thing and this thing and this thing. So like, we need to name it like something, and they go Dave, and they go, yep, they go, okay,
that's what it is. We all have Dave.
we're all Dave. But yeah, I think like labels are important, and I also think that's why it's important to be very truthful with your doctors as well, because I think there's a lot of times where you might not think something is a symptom and like it very much is. And I think being like very truthful and open can help a lot when it comes to your doctor doing that, because you could, like, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety for years and years, and I finally started to go very much in depth just about the way that I was like feeling and different symptoms and things like that. And then I was diagnosed with bipolar because there were very specific things in what I was saying that led them to figure that out. And I probably had that for years. I probably just neglected to say those specific things when I was talking beforehand.
I also think that when you're also earlier on in like discussing the stuff you're going through, I think discussing everything, especially when you have to go from new therapist to new therapist, find new work.
No, it's super
so
100%.
You're like, here's 1,000 things I have to dump on you and fucking sort that out.
Right. Yeah, especially with therapists, with psychiatry and stuff like that. A lot of times it is more medical, so sometimes that is is a little easier, but still just
more
thinking
cut
of
and
it all
dried
too. Like
typically.
I think when you're at the beginning too, you don't know that things specifically are symptoms sometimes too. So you
Yes.
think that like I can just like neglect that, you know? Like when I think I was 16 when I first went to a therapist or psychiatrist, and they were like, well, like what kind of symptoms do you have? Because I was told that I probably had depression, and so I'd say like I get like just really fatigued and tired, like I just don't have the will to like get up and like get out of bed and like do stuff even though like I know I have to, and just kind of feeling like hopeless, like like sometimes you think that like there is no tomorrow, like what's the point of tomorrow and things like that, and like that was it, and I very much like neglected talking about like in the middle of the night having insomnia, which was a thing for depression, but also anxiety. Neglecting personal hygiene is part of depression. Sitting at night while having insomnia but overthinking everything is a sign of anxiety, and I just thought that those were things that people just did, like people think about their day at the end of the day. I didn't realize that I was overthinking. I didn't realize that I was neglecting personal hygiene, but those are all things that are helpful for them to do because then it can still help them more effectively like categorize it. And so that's why I found out I had anxiety and depression, so yeah, I think it's just like being able to do that, and I think that's why labels help as well, because if you didn't know that you had PTSD, like if I didn't know I had PTSD, I wouldn't be able to tell a therapist that, and they wouldn't be able to give me tips for things when I dissociate, or for you when you dissociate, or just like things that are helpful. Because if you went in there and you're just like, oh well, I just check out for a few minutes, but I'm sure everybody does that, you wouldn't know that you're like dissociating and that there are things you can do to ground yourself and
right,
bring yourself
you'd think it just
back.
is. And I also we don't have to dive into this, but I just wanted to touch on the fact that we were talking about how it's not one size fits all, and even the fact that we have some things that are similar diagnoses, we don't necessarily have them happen the same way and have the same treatment for it. I'm specifically thinking of dissociations and how different those are for the two of us, and we don't have to explain that, but I find that so interesting that, like, I'll just talk about mine, but for me, when I dissociate, typically no one can really tell. It used to be, I think, more obvious when I did, but you might just think that, like,
you almost seem like you're tired, like that's you more just seem like you're tired and just like a little like checked out,
but I can typically like, I can kind of engage if someone is engaging with me, and that's the biggest way for me to get out of dissociating is engagement with other people.
Right.
Yeah. But it's not like, it's not what it once was, where I think it used to almost be more dangerous, where I would be in a physical situation with someone and completely goodbye. She's somewhere. She's somewhere over there.
Right. And I like lose time. Like I very much like will like completely just check out. Like my like you would think I'm asleep waking up pretty much, except I don't actually know that I'm doing that. I just kind of wake up a few minutes later, and it's just sort of like that's where I am, like, and that's just sort of like what it is, because I think there's different levels of it too, because I've had dissociations very similar to that, where you're just like in a moment you can still like hear everything,
you kind of know
like,
something's going on.
You can even answer. Like I've definitely like been able, and I think I actually do that more with my family than anything. Like it's just like, I think maybe because those environments are more comfortable, I guess, maybe, and that's why, like, you're like, we're gonna check out, but like we'll keep our head in the door, so I don't know why, but yeah, and like I very much just like gone, just like check out, and like that, like things like that are just sometimes scary, because like there's times where just like an hour's gone, and I think like that's the hardest thing to explain, because like no, it's hard to picture that unless it's happened, like, and you don't really ever, like, if you've ever had surgery and you've had to be put under for surgery, and you count back from 10, and then the next thing that you remember is you're just awake, it's that, like, if just think of that, except like you're sitting in the same spot and you just look at the clock and it's just a different time,
It's so interesting hearing you talk about it and describing it for you, because for me, even when I used to lose time, because when I initially was diagnosed and I initially had it happening constantly, but it was pretty much only in physical situations. And I mean like physically intimate with someone. I would lose all that time. I wouldn't remember anything that happened. And I want to clarify that my partners at this time knew of my dissociations. Like, we had a lot of safety things in place. I'm not claiming anything like bad happened. I am super just saying, like, I had partners that knew of the issues I was dealing with and we worked around it. But I would straight up forget things. Like extended periods of time that I hung out with them, that I would not at all remember it. I wouldn't even like remember that day maybe, but they didn't. It doesn't, for me, I never described it as like falling asleep and waking up. I don't know why. It's almost like I feel more like, for me, it was like pause. Like I don't feel the I
didn't feel like I fell asleep or woken up. I was in a way of describing it, but to like other people, like
I just mean like that space of time. Like, I don't know how to explain how the feeling of losing it, because the way I just find it so interesting, because I feel like we almost feel differently about our loss of time. Like, I don't know. It's like the same way when I initially explained dissociations to my therapist as being strobe lights. And I don't know anyone else who's explained theirs that way. Not saying you can't. I'm not saying I lead ownership to explaining it that way. But that's how I initially explained it. I was like, you know, when you feel strobe lights and like you kind of like, you know, you feel a little out of it. That's how I feel all the time when I dissociate. And that's when I got diagnosed. She was like, Leah, that's not normal. I was like, oh yes, who didn't know? But there's something very odd about that time where you definitely, when we have talked about it, I think it definitely freaks you out that you've lost that time. I don't know why. I never cared. I don't know. I don't think I'm freaked out. I think the scary thing of it is I am more, because here's the thing. I don't actually know if in longer periods of time if I talk. Yes. Because at that point, if I do talk or say things like, I don't know, I've done that. Like, and I know you have freaked out about things like that too, where like you have just said that you don't know what has been said, and that sometimes is scary because then you have to rely on other people telling you. No, they are two different things. Yeah, sorry. I meant like my memory issues in general freak me out more than my moments where I've dissociated, oddly enough. But that's the whole thing, is like it doesn't short-term freak me out, because like if I'm at your house and it happens, like that doesn't freak me out. I'm more embarrassed more than just like because I'm just there and I probably just look like nothing, you know, like. Or maybe I talk. I don't know. But I feel like you would have said that, so I assume I don't. You don't talk. And because those short bursts, like it's just like you wake up and there's a few minutes that are gone, you know. And I think I'm not actually freaked out in the thought process of like this time is just gone. That's just freaky. Like just the situation of like there was time that was there that I can't account for. The thought of that's weird. I don't actually feel freaked out or anything like that. Okay, that makes more sense by those situations. And the way you described it as like time pause, that is more what it's like. Okay. I feel like other people can't. That might be harder to relate to. Okay, that's fair. Right. I think because I'm just not used to phrasing it in a way that makes it so people who don't have the issue understand it. So that's probably the issue I'm having. Because I'm sure you relate to this too. When you're in that situation, time. You still feel time. Your brain is still working. You're just not in the blackout times. You're not taking any outside stimuli, really. Yes. Like, but you are still there. Like your brain is still thinking of something. Like there are still things that are going on. Yes. And that's why it more feels like time is paused, because you're not taking in outside stimuli, but you're still like there. What is it called? It's the Adam Sandler click. Yeah, click, exactly. Yeah. It makes me think of that, because I'm like, you could go around and do all these things, but it's like you're in a weird limbo. Like it's and you're just doing that like in your head, like that time like does like the time exists. But when you come to the outside world's different, and that's like the different. Bernard's watch. You know, that's like the different thing. The problem is just like with long times, because there are times where I'll dissociate for like 8 hours, you know, but
I'm doing things, you know, like I'm driving and I'm going to work and I'm like doing things, you know, and like that very rarely happens, thankfully, but it is just like that. It's that same thing, but I know for a fact I've had to have talked, you know, like I'm moving around. So like, but my brain is just checked out, you know, and so like coming to and being somewhere else and knowing that I had this list of things to do and that these things are done and I'm home, but I don't know how I got there. Like those are the freaky things because I just don't. I can't account for that. I think you've
lost more time in your dissociations than I ever have, and
that's
I think
happened
that's part of it.
3 times my entire life.
But I'm saying, so that's even more fair because I think that I probably for the most have lost like 3 or 4 hours. I think that's maybe, and that was like when I was first diagnosed and like the symptoms were fucking constant, and like I had to be aware of it. My partners had to be aware of it. Like this was an ongoing issue constantly for safety concerns, and I don't think though. Since that time, I don't think I've lost more than like minutes. I don't think I really dissociate for more than minutes now. And I think
recently it's been at most like 30 minutes, and it's probably been with you guys. So
I think that shows even a huge difference in this one thing we've both been diagnosed with and how greatly different they are. Like the time we lose, like how often this happens to the two of us, like it's just incredibly interesting. Like even having that diagnosis is helpful to each of us individually, but still would require working through it with a specialist to understand the nuances of our specific diagnosis.
Right, and having different ways. Like I know, like for instance, like I think me and you have talked about this, but we can almost like feel like when it's gonna happen. Like, you know, like we can tell that we're just in his we're like teetering, and there's things that we do and like we can like figure out when. So for instance, like I have songs that I can listen to that like for a lot of times will just keep me like grounded. You know?
I have ones that'll make me dissociate. Like I
definitely have some.
And I'm not that this is a good thing, and I think it's important to learn not to be self-destructive, but there was definitely a point in my life where I was probably a little self-destructive, and I was like, fuck it, I don't want to be here, and I would purposefully not try to reground myself. And I'd just be like,
well, you gotta remember, that's what there's actually military and like other like agents who train to do that for torture, because if you're dissociating, you can't really feel pain. You can like check out and you can't be tortured. So there are places that actually train people to
horrifying. I didn't know that.
Well, it's but it's like
it makes imagine if sense, you had but
imagine if you had a switch for that, you know? Like
I used to really have a switch. Like when it was first an issue, I think switch I'll use a little loosely. I think part of it was I was dissociating so often that the odds of it coming up were really high, and I knew how to give into it, and I knew how to not give into it to an extent, the not give into it. But I think it almost at some point in a fucked up way felt like a superpower. I was like, I can leave. I can leave.
Right. And I think I definitely feel that. Like I think that's just more when you're like teetering on that line where you can like, I think when you're on that line and you can feel it coming, like, and me too, I'm just saying you as in like a thing, but when you're like on the line, like, I feel like what's really keeping you from dissociating is more of the resistance of you not wanting to do that. So the switch is really you just giving in a sense, you know?
Yes, that's
whereas
fair.
Like these other people who are training are who are actually being able to just like go into it. Like if I had to like this moment, I'd probably can't. Like I don't think I can like this second like go and do that. I could try and
could do things to try songs, and trigger it.
Right. But it's just like it's not a I want easy to like switch.
Catch up on Phil's thing. No. Without because you're not diagnosed, I'm just not going to say it, but this is not to in any way discount you. I'm just only doing it since this is like a fucking live podcast. But I will say, because we're not specialists and can't diagnose you, but coming from a place of us both having it and us having discussed it with you, I super can relate, and I think Beta can too based on our conversations, the idea of losing time and coming back to a lot of people is fucking overwhelming. Very overwhelming. So the fact that you would get snippy and like annoyed with them, 1,000 fucking percent, because you're kind of like, I've been out of it and I come back and there are all these people like, fuck no. Gen Call is the worst place to dissociate and come back and be like, the fuck. There's so many times, not even at the point where I've dissociated, but where I've felt my anxiety get really bad to a point where I know I could dissociate, and it'll get so bad, and like being in Gen Call with that many people, I'm like, oh hell no, like I need out
That's why
for
I'm
a little
not there
bit.
a ton. It's just like that, Yeah, it's just taking the.
It can be a lot. It's too much stimulation when there's this much happening up here.
Right. 100%. I think is a lot. Yeah, I think everyone has a different like thing. I think the reason I don't think I get angry or snap or anything like that is more because I think you overcompensate for knowing that if you've done that, you overcompensate by trying to just sort of like assimilate back into whatever was happening. And so you a lot of times will just be like overly nice or in Gen Call it's a little different because in Gen Call I'll usually just leave. Like if I get like
yes, Gen
Call's
easier.
I just be like, I gotta go bye, and then just leave. But like in person or whatever, it's just like you just tend to be overly interested again, and just like try and like I gotta make it seem like I'm normal again, and like so you become like extra nice and like in my case I just try and make a joke. Because then it's like, that'll make people think I'm normal again. It's just making a joke, Like, that'll be okay.
It's interesting you say that I need to leave now, Phil, because with pretty much all of my anxiety in general, if I'm not freezing, because freezing's my default, because why not? Don't be fucking helpful with any of your survival tactics, just fucking freeze. But if I cannot do that, flight is my immediate response. I'm not a fighter. I am a fucking fleer. When I feel uncomfortable in a situation, like going back to when I was getting like yelled at dog training, I wanted to leave. Like everything I felt in my body was get the fuck out. And that's just when I am in an incredibly uncomfortable situation where I feel either like I'm the center of attention in a really negative way, or just feel like all eyes are on me in a way I'm not happy about, or things like that, and I'm being attacked a little bit, my immediate response is, I need to fucking leave so far away as soon as possible. Like, I will become the Flash. I will yeet down the street. Like
I have the same thing too, and I think for me personally, I think that came from being bullied. And more so of just like that if you're in a situation and it's bad, you just remove yourself from it, which is like messed up that is what society tells you to do in a sense, but like now it has manifested into that is just how like I deal with problems, whether it's mentally checking out or physically, like I need to just like leave. And that's why like a lot of times, like if we're in big group gatherings, I like take a step and leave, just because it's like that's just like what I do, like, and that's just a way where you can physically leave and then mentally like check out, for a time. So I think it's I know for me that the just like leaving part, because I used to just like mentally check out and just stay in the thing because it didn't matter, because I was just like, I'm mentally checked out, it doesn't matter. But now I think from just being bullied and having that reaction, I physically now leave. And then also
it like does something inside of you, like like you feel it everywhere. You're just like, how can I be so gone? And Phil, I do completely agree with you. I think something that a lot of people that do have mental health issues deal with is like we're hyper aware of our issues, and then we also sometimes really want to cover that in front of other people, so we super overcompensate and we do things that make us uncomfortable to try and seem more normal, or to just like make everyone else feel fine about the situation. And I'm going to challenge all of us to stop fucking doing that. Challenging all of us, because myself included, I need
be more
to
like Beta. Just leave.
Yeah, it's so much better. You don't owe anyone anything. You're not being rude. Like, fucking save yourself that extra minute of peace that you could have. Like, take it. We deserve it. We need it. What I was alluding to earlier, teachers do so little about bullying and most often tell you to just take yourself away. Yes, I started an anti-bullying thing at my school in middle school, and it was, I'm gonna be so honest on how stupid it was, because I was a kid in charge of this, right? And I probably shouldn't have had a kid in charge of it. And the fucking the teacher that was helping out with the program, because there has to obviously be a teacher involved, had this brilliant idea to bring together the person being bullied and the bullier and talk to them as a group and explain to them why what they did was wrong and to not do it again, but like all as a group. And looking back on that, I feel so bad for any of the kids we quote unquote helped. Like, I probably added to their trauma. Like, I feel so bad about it all the time. Like, what a counterproductive fucking thing. And had I had my way, I didn't want that. I didn't want them to talk to... I didn't want to talk to the bullies. To be honest, I was kind of like, fuck the bullies. Like, it's the same thing we talk about all the time where it's like, you can get better away from me.
Just deny it anyway. Yeah, it's just
that
like,
was it.
Bullies just deny it anyway. It was like...
an incredibly stupid move, and it goes to show that just because something on paper sounds like, oh, you care about people being bullied and you want to help them, doesn't mean it just inherently is helpful. It super fucking wasn't. It probably caused way more issues. I think some kids were continually bullied because the program made it worse. And it's just horrific. It's horrific that we would be in charge of something that we definitely were not qualified for as middle schoolers, and that there wasn't someone in charge who knew enough about bullying to know this was a fucking horrible idea. Horrible.
So bad.
Words can't even make up for it. Break down that. Right. But the thing is, we could have spoken to them separately, right? We could have only done the separate stuff. If we really wanted to help the bully, like, fix their shit, we could have talked to them totally separate. Bringing them together was an unnecessarily traumatizing thing for the person already bullied.
Right.
No one wants to sit down with their bully. Fuck my bullies. Bitch, go get yourself help as far away from me as possible. We need to make that merch. You can get help all the way away from me.
You can be a better person just far away from me.
Yeah. That, like, that just encompasses everything, because everyone, yes, deserves the grace to become a better person. But if you did something to me, I don't owe it to you to have to stick around and see you become that better person. That's not on me.
That's also, like, even the saying that, you know, like, I think, like, do you know how before I was talking about how there is we think below, like, the surface level of things, you know, like we sort of, like, go under the surface to, like, get more meaning and things out of whatever. And most people, I feel, in the center of that group are, if someone does something bad to you, fuck them, they're bad, you know, like, get the fuck out of here, like, that's it. And we we thought about that and said, well, everyone deserves a chance to get better, and so, like, even these people who really fucked us over, like, deserve a thing. That's still, like, the product of us, like, overthinking and being so extra thoughtful for
that's true.
that thing, you know, because here's the thing, and all the center people are just like, this person did this really terrible thing to me, they're a dick all the time no matter what, you know, and, like, we have thought under the surface. But I think that is, like, that's such a good point of that, though, is that, like, yes, that is true. Those people can probably fix their life in some way, you know, and I'm glad that we've thought about the way of, like, just fucking, I don't want to know, though. Like,
because I think
never want to actually do that.
It almost loops back into all the stuff we talk about where, like, shaming people helps them get better, blah blah. It's this, like, constant letting ourselves be tormented by things that we feel like we've almost earned that. We're like, no, I should constantly have to deal with my abuser. No, you shouldn't. Fuck them. Like, everyone's trauma is their own. You can feel however you want about your trauma. I'm not trying to project this onto anyone else. I never want to fucking hear from my abusers ever again. I don't want to know anything they're up to. I don't want to know anything about their life, and they can fuck right off with that. Some I feel a little, you know, more strongly negatively about than others.
Right.
But I don't know if it's the fact that I was raised with religion or whatever, but deep down, I am okay with the idea that they can become a better person. I am okay with the idea that they could have a good life, but there is an asterisk on that they can have a good life if they've made real changes. And
away from me.
Right. And I think that for a long time, I didn't give myself the grace that I don't need to fucking know. I used to have friends, I'll use friends in quotes since this person's now good friends with my abuser, that they knew about all these bad things this person did, and they would constantly, though, update me on their life after they were no longer in my life. And why did I have to keep going through that? Why? I didn't do anything to deserve any of the treatment I had, period. But even on top of that, to have to constantly go through the trauma of being told about what my abuser is up to, stop doing that. No one wants to know what their abuser is up to. And if they do, it's a fucked up part of their brain that they need to work on too. So you're not helping them though in the long run. Like
and I think people even think that like if they're doing it from a way that like, well, they're in really bad shape because like one, I think what they don't realize is people who are abused are still human. I don't know if you knew that, but they actually have feelings and still care about like the world, you know? So if someone is down on their luck, you then start to say like, well, I don't want this person to have like a shitty life. I don't want them to have a good life either. Like, you know, that's the constant battle that's happening in your head. But also it's from lasting abuse, depending on what happened for you to have been abused. It's well, now I feel like I owe it to like check up on them or think like, you know, you don't ever know what's going to like pull you back
connected in a fucked up way.
That thing. Right. And so people think that like, oh, well, if they're doing bad, like you would want to know better, right? Like, you know, because like that'll make you feel better. And it's like, no, like that might just make it worse.
Right, because you might empathize with them again. Which is what caused
and then it makes this person see.
Yeah.
Right.
Human.
And I think like
fuck that.
I think a good, and I just want to talk about it briefly so that way we don't get too far into it or whatever, but I think
because then we're gonna call it.
I think a lot of people I know that, and also it's just a deep topic that I don't feel like we need to like spend a ton of time on, but just as far as it just goes with this sentiment of like, I think a lot of people who are abused have the sentiment of like, I don't ever want to hear from you again, like go on with your life or whatever. And why, when these people become public figures and stuff, you then have all these people who come out and say, this person did this thing, this person did this thing.
We've talked about this.
And then they go, well, why did you wait so long or whatever? And it's because I didn't think I'd ever see them again. And now they're in this position where they are I
can't avoid them now. They
in
now
the spotlight,
are so public.
And I have to know that they're there. And now you get pushed to the point of I need to just say this now, right? Because it's
no longer something that is just like a hidden part of my past, out of sight, out of mind. I am now forced to constantly see this human being existing, and with everything they did to me, that's too much for me to handle anymore. This is a topic we discussed before. I'm happy to dive into it deeper, but maybe we could do it next stream. Next podcast, because I do think it's a really important topic and a good topic that we've touched on in the past, but maybe we can like start off at that point next time as our jumping off point. But I do want to say a big thank you to everyone for being here. This was lots of fun. Like, I feel like fun is a weird word with all the topics we discussed, but I love the topics we get into. I love the discussions we have. Beta and I think just have a good time going back and forth with each other, and having chat to chime in and kind of refocus us or give us another perspective is just incredibly enjoyable. And I just truly, truly appreciate it. Thank you so much, Just Ask Miles. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We went all around. We went all around for this one, but it was good. And I think it still had a path, even if it was a kind of wonky one. As a quick reminder, I will be streaming art tomorrow morning around 9:30 a.m. In addition to that, if you haven't wished Beta a happy birthday, it was his birthday yesterday, so you should wish him a happy birthday. And on that final note, we are preparing for me to go full time, so if you have not followed and you would like to, please do. Please like check out all of my socials. My links are below. I will be hopefully going full time in the next like 4 to 6 months, depending on when I can get out my lease. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's going to be more content, and I'm very excited to share it all with you. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Rouge. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And yeah, so like, I'm excited for this journey. We're gonna have some fun times. No, don't worry we appreciate your lurk. We love you. But I'm gonna roll the credits and we'll be off momentarily. If you do have any topics, though, of discussion you would like to bring up in an upcoming podcast, you can feel free to put in ideas and suggestions in the Discord channel. Also, on the 26th, we currently have scheduled our LGBTQIA2+ stream. And it's going to be with myself, Beta, and Phil and Laura. Those are currently the cast members on it. So if there are any specific things you would like to hear us go over in that discussion as well, please also feel free to leave that in the Discord ideas and suggestions area. We do have a couple ideas in mind already. We want to go through some history and our own experiences. But of course, anything in particular you think is important and essential for us to touch on, we'd love to hear. And with that, sorry for my filibustering. I was trying to pull up the credits. I'll roll the credits now.